Welcome back to the Sega Guys podcast, Sega fans. The podcast that is no joke. So sit back and endure the ride. This is Dan the Mega Driver going nowhere fast, alongside my good friend, the virtual fighter to my victory goal, James the Sakeaholic. Mate, how you doing?
I'm very good, mate. You've lifted some lines out of my video that'll be coming out tomorrow at the time of this airing. Very good, mate. I like that. It's good. That's a nice wee segue into it. I like that. It's very good.
They're classic Sega slogans, mate. So obviously we're talking about the Sega Saturn and rounding out this awesome foursome. You know, obviously there was 4 launch titles, so we've got 4 Saturn fans here. The Daytona USA and the Clockwork Night of this discussion. It's the Gaming for Ages, lads. Dibs and Bedgel, gents, great to have you back on.
Good to see you. I know, too. I'm just wondering which is which, though. Are you going to leave it to
I'll
fate?
take Daytona. Shotgun Daytona.
Left that one open, didn't I?
Well, in your most recent video, Bedgel, you were Daytona, so maybe you got the claim to it.
Yeah, I think I state my claim, dude. Sorry.
Unfortunately, no outrun, but that was a great video at the time. But we love time stamping this stuff, but the time of recording, yeah, just a couple of days ago, you had the Outrun 2 versus Daytona. What's the greatest arcade racing game of all time? So yeah, very good stuff.
No doubt the argument will still be going on. It's too close, it'll still be rumbling on for a while.
It's a tough call.
Yeah. So as I was saying before we hit the record button, thought it was a little bit skewed. Obviously, female co-pilots aren't in Daytona. Yeah, I did like that on the Outrun side. It was it's got the Scud race tracks and it's got hidden Outrun. And then when we got to the Daytona side, it was, I can't use the Sega Saturn version, so we won't use the home port. I was like, yeah, but Scud race is exclusive to the home port.
We did look back afterwards. What have we done? We both love Daytona. We've just
I've not watched this video yet. Is there Daytona home port slander going on here?
No.
Never.
It's talk about the arcade games, but yeah, the Outrun 2 snuck a couple of home port extras in there.
It did, yeah.
It all
Like
counts.
those teasing bastards that they were.
Yeah.
We never gave you these games, but we'll just put the tracks out Outrun 2 just to
Have a look
just
at
to
them.
make.
Right. Yeah.
Again, it's the old kind of bullseye moment again, isn't it? It's like, let's take a look at what you could have won.
Yeah, the little flag waving guy at the start of the Outrun track is Jimbo. Like, look at Rick Little.
Mate, he looks me a little bully. Jim Bowen was like that, mate. It's like
Now I need someone in the Sega Saturn modding community to like have a counter as you go around the let's go. And 1, and 2.
That's it. We've all thought it.
There
You
go.
know what Outrun 2 needs? Bully from Countdown. That's the one missing thing.
Oh, but I was actually thinking Daytona as you go around.
Yeah.
But either works.
Either works. Get Takano Mitsuyoshi doing it.
There we go. But yes, so Daytona will be part of the chat today because obviously at the time of recording it will be the eve of the anniversary of the Sega Saturn UK launch, 30 years. We did the birthday. I think the rule we always have, isn't it, James? You have one birthday, but you can have many anniversaries. So we've done
mate.
So we've had the Saturn birthday, but yeah, we can celebrate the anniversary. It was the US one, obviously, the anniversary of it being announced at E3 in May, but this is the UK July celebration. And we've got 3 gents who played it during the launch window. I didn't. I'm the odd one out, so I'll be deferring to you guys. You were the boots on the ground at the time, so really looking forward to hearing, those stories and your first experiences with it. But I thought to start off with, and because usually, James and I, when we talked to Mel, when we talked to the Shiro guys, but obviously that's a very US centric view of, which is great. But it'd be good to really round off kind of how it felt to be a Sega fan in the UK in 1995 pre-Saturn. So, just generally open it up to the floor, or maybe, Bedrell, Dibs, what were your thoughts like 1995? Bedrell, did you have a 32X then? Like, were you buying the Sega
Yeah,
mags? What was
yeah,
it
yeah.
like being a Sega fan in 1995, pre Sega Saturn?
Oh, a quick one, just as you were saying that, it's just it has been great getting that US view though. I mean,
Oh yeah.
fantastic thing about your podcast and obviously the wider group that sort of representing. It's like it's been fascinating hearing the other bit because it is really different, and I think this
Mm.
will bring out a lot of that. But yeah, I mean, in that period, I think it's fair to say we were deep. We were deep into Sega land. And we've chatted the four of us about kind of the years prior to the launch, and I think it's fair to say that we kind of like our for Dibs and me, like maybe our peak love, our peak games might have been earlier, but probably our hype for Sega might have been at its peak at this point because Dibs often says to me like one of the things that he loves, and same here, but I always remember like the sort of giddiness that used to bring to him about it was just Sega's like manic creativity, and obviously
Mm.
through that period in the run up, it had just been games, 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 machines, 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 ideas, ideas, ideas. It was just they were so vibrant and they were so exciting. So we were probably, I'd say, still at kind of peak like Sega fandom at the point we're in the run up to the Saturn launch. And so, for the excitement about the machine, and I suppose the lack of concrete facts for a long time, just the wild sort of variations in what they were promising was really exciting. But we were so kind of into it. I think even if we'd had no details, I think the hype would have been there. Maybe, unfortunately, the effect on me was that it played into the hands of the 32X creators. I was the classic 32X buyer, which was like, I can't wait. I need a fix. I need like the next thing. I've got it. Oh, it's kind of cool. Oh, it's run out of games. Oh shit, I wish I hadn't bought it. And, I did the whole thing, but I guess I don't regret buying it. But yeah, that was very much the symptom. The hype was real. We were feeling it so much. And I think the 32X kind of just landed in that bit, and I got pulled into it and
Mm.
kept us going, kept us interested for a bit. But yeah, we were deep in. What about you, Dis? So that capture, I called you giddy. Would you say you were giddy?
Oh, most of the time I am. I feel it a little right now, actually. No, but yeah, no, it was like, I mean, for me, it was like Sega was like huge at that time because of at my school, it was like it felt like everyone had a Mega Drive. There was like I know like two kids who had like a Super Nintendo, and it just felt like Sega were like kings of the world. And it was like, you were just looking at what was going to come next, and the anticipation was just incredible. Like waiting for, seeing Daytona in the arcade and thinking like, oh, we're going to be getting this at home pretty soon, like, and it was just like, and Sega were kind of selling that kind of angle. Like I was just looking through, I think it was issue 6 of Sega magazine earlier. It's the one with Jackie on the front cover. It's got kind of
Yeah.
like a red picture, red cover, I mean. And they were showing some like early Saturn games from like a CES show, but I swear it looks like kind of washed out footage of the arcade games, the Virtua Fighter and Daytona. Like it looks like that's what they've taken it from. Because I remember the real first screenshots of Daytona. It was kind of on the 37 Speedway, and the kind of the arch with the slots on it. It was kind of like wireframe still, where they hadn't filled it in, and that's when we were kind of really getting an idea of what it was going to be like. But like the wind was just in Sega's sails for me for that hype because of yeah, it was like Beja was saying, like all these ideas, they were just chucking everything at the wall, and I was just like give me more of this stuff. Like this is all so exciting and things. And yeah, and like I say, like everyone, it felt like everyone had like a Mega Drive and stuff, and at least to me, it felt like the SNES had really kind of faded away. Like it kind of got almost the later Saturn treatment, where you would find that the SNES games on the end of one of the the rows in Electronics Boutique, where it was kind of just faded out completely. But yeah, it was just. It was just Sega everywhere, it felt at the time, and I was just like loving it, and like
Yeah,
yeah, I didn't really see what was coming with the with the Saturn, like,
it
but
it makes me think though. Obviously, the thing I didn't mention just then is a lot of that hype was coming from the arcades, and I mean,
yeah.
it's very true that the sales pitch was kind of it was pushing, you're going to get the arcade. I mean, it's always
Yeah.
push, you're going to get the arcade. Mega Drive push, you're going to get the arcade. But I mean, we were going to the arcades and seeing Virtua Racing, Virtua Fighter, Daytona in quick succession. I mean, those couple of years building up to it, you know, we'd had some amazing launches, and just, you know, I think you guys probably have been the same. And Sega was just so sexy. People didn't really, even people at school which weren't really into games and stuff, they still knew the brand. It's an irony, isn't it? Obviously, I think it was doing then what PlayStation would do a few years later, but it was just landed every punch, you know, and it was chucking such a lot out there, and such a lot of it was sticking. But yeah, the arcades. I mean, we were just hyped because, you know, we go on a lot about Daytona. It's obviously the center of all this, but it wasn't just Daytona. We were going in there, getting fueled up, coming back, reading the magazine, seeing all their hype, and although a lot of what they said, like Daytona on 32X and that sort of thing, didn't come to fruition, it's like a lot of it did to some extent. You know, they did bring Daytona home, and I think the four of us are all kind of aligned. Whatever you say about it, I bloody love that game.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of it did come true, but the fact is, all of it fed into the hype, and we were, my God, we were worked up.
Yeah, we were riding that wave.
Because James, you were very much in the arcades at the time, weren't you? You were,
Yep.
you know, you had your Game Gear for in the home, but you were down booths like every week, pretty much, seeing Sega's newest arcade machines there and then, weren't you?
Aye, I mean, pretty much like I would kind of go up to my uncle's pretty much every weekend, or other weekend, and we would just kind of go into the town, like just kind of do the kind of rounds around the kind of the game stores and the kind of the techie stores like Dixon's and Comet, and just to basically look at what new shit was on the shelves, basically.
Take it
you
in,
know?
yeah.
Or like, you know, back then, like, you used to get big displays in the store windows, would have like umpteen CRTs with like machines hooked up to them. What games are running this weekend? You know, but I was in booths. I say, in there, and, you know, I got my few quid, my rations. I had to choose what I played carefully. You know, I mean, to be fair, we spent more time walking around and just looking at the attract modes and just checking out cabinets. It was like, because like, it was one of the things where we had a week in a routine. We went to booths, so we would go in, have a look about the machines, then we'd go and used to put 10 quid deposit down at the desk to get the pool balls, right? We got up to the upper level, play a couple of games of pool, go back down, play some games. Well, I'd play a few games, right? And then we'd go across the Central Station, and there was a bar in Central Station called Gilly Brown's, right? And because I was a big lanky streak of pish that looked about 20 whenever I was like 16, 15, 16, like I got served, right? So I used to go in and get like a Budweiser, right? So I thought I was the fucking bollocks, man. I'm going into the arcades. I'm playing these games, going for a Budweiser, then get up the road, right? As, you know, James's uncle just promoting underage drinking, you know. But you know, it was just kind of routine. Just it was things that we did, and obviously the kind of the big one was Virtua Fighter. Let's say the booth, so they had the big deluxe cabinet with a big rear projection, 50-inch screen with a sit down with a big long joystick kind of panel in front of you, the two sticks. It was like, oh man, and it took me ages to get past Jeffrey. Like whenever I played VF and like the home on Saturn, like see putting it on an easier difficulty and beating up Jeffrey, that was like payback for like fucking months of torture by that bastard, honestly. But the arcade is pretty much where I seen what Sega were really about. Like obviously we all know the story about how I never got a Mega Drive. And it's my one real regret in my gaming life. It's like, don't get me wrong, I loved the ST when I got it, and there was some good games on there. I didn't have it for long. Thankfully, got the Amiga 500, and like just I had so much fun in that system. Like again, in school, we had a lot of Amiga owners in our school, so we all kind of bounced off each other. You know, X copy, pack of TDKs round your mates, flicking through their box of, you know, floppy disks and having a look and seeing what's there and copying them over. So they were great memories playing the Amiga, and it's a brilliant system. As I say, like Speedball 2, Turrican 2, Shadow of the Beast, Desert Strike Port on Amiga is absolutely phenomenal. Body Blows, Rise of the Robots, joking. But they were all great games. Championship Manager Italia. Oh man, it's just such a I love Championship Manager on the Amiga. Me and Sam used to play that for so long, man. Held the spacebar down to make the clock go faster, and you became an absolute expert at reading the commentary. Like, yes, yes. It was like, and
like bloody Johnny Five from Short Circuit.
Need more goals. Need more goals. But it's like, but it was like, what was it? Was it season 93, 94, or 94, 95 Champ Man Italia, right? And what was it? Basically, me and Sam used to kind of go, Bagsy, get first signing, right? Because see if he signed either Alan Shearer or Eric Cantona, right? I would go Milan, he would go Juve, right? And we could rattle through like seasons in a day, just like he held the spacebar and the clock went. But see if he signed like Cantona or Shearer for like 5 million quid, they would score like 75 plus goals a season. Like it just made a mockery of Serie A, and it's not like, which at the time was the most defensively sound league in the world, right? So we used to basically just sign those two and run amok and had great fun. So I tangent over Amiga, brilliant system, loved it, but not getting a Mega Drive is still something I feel I really missed out on. I would have loved to have been part of that. The whole hype of it, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. So I kind of lived, Sega's kind of peak at that point through the arcades, just seeing the innovations that they were bringing in terms of technology that way. So it's Virtua Fighter's a catalyst. Like whenever you first laid eyes on that, you couldn't believe the fluidity of humanoid movement in that game. It was mind blowing, and just everything about it, like the announcer, the music, even the stages, as much as like they're so basic, just a 2D background with a 3D ring, but they all set the scene amazingly. Like you look at like Wolf's kind of sunset stage, Lau's kind of dusk stage, the way it he's got a metal ring whenever he smacks you off it, you hear the dong whenever he rattles your head first. So many little touches in that, despite it being Model 1 and flat shaded. Just so much depth to it.
It's just a little like camera moving around, like any effects, the size of the characters. I mean, you think what sprites would do at the time. Those 3D models on the screen, the cabinets themselves, and like that one you were sitting on, there was nothing like that before that was out. It was, there were all these stock MDF black boxes, and then it just went nuts in that period. Yeah, so everything about it, super sexy.
And Sega were basically making the cabinets became part of the experience with Sega as well. Like you said, they were just like, you can think about Street Fighter 2 or Final Fight or WrestleFest or any of these, even the driving games that you had like Chase HQ, it was still the same design with a wee tiny steering wheel, But Sega decided that no, the cabinet has to accentuate the game, and again, that was something else that they did amazingly.
Yeah, I think that, and you saw that in like virtual racing. But I think that, funny enough, the time of recording this, it's the day after Sega's 65th birthday. So, but there you look back at their kind of timeline. The Japanese X account had like a 4 picture. You had to click on the picture to enlarge it, and it showed, and it was like 1960, and it's like obviously a big mechanical cab. So that's in their like DNA. Well, I think, obviously you were engrossed in Sega at the time, James, with the Game Gear and via the arcades. I think were you saying that you regret not getting a Mega Drive? I think the thing that I feel at the time, like having had a Mega Drive and being dialed in with all, like, there were so many mags. You had Sega Official Magazine, Sega Mean Machine Sega, Sega Pro, Sega Power, Mega. There was so much information all the time, and then you had like all the stuff coming in the arcade. You had the news articles, you had the Mega CD was out. You had the 32X. I really wanted a 32X. I was another one that said, do you know what? I can't afford a Sega Saturn. You know, I couldn't afford a Mega CD. That was like 299. And this Sega Saturn, that was like they were talking about in hushed whispers, and it was running Virtua Fighter. I was like, I'm never going to be able to afford that. I'm not going to be able to ask my mum and dad for one for my birthday because they're going to say, piss off, it's going to be about 500 quid or something.
Yeah.
So I'll save up my paper round money and get a 32X. But I always wanted more. You know, there was so much stuff coming through. It was like, I remember when I saw a Mega CD, I was like, I want a Mega CD. And mum and dad were like, oh, well, how much is that? No. And then I was like, saw Sonic CD, I was like, oh, I need Sonic CD. It's like, no.
you know, you know what though with the 32X, right? If I honestly, I buy into this. If they'd have said to me at the start, right, I can't remember what it actually. I didn't buy it. I think was it 200, maybe 150.
It was 150 quid.
If they'd have said to me, right, it's 150, and you can have Doom, Virtua Fighter, Virtua Racing, Star Wars Arcade, or Star Wars, whatever it's called, and you know you'll play it for a year, and that's the deal. I would have taken it because you think what I paid for Virtua Racing, or we were being asked to pay for Virtua Racing. These one-off experiences, if they were properly worth it, it wasn't awful value. It was more just the kind of promises made and not kept.
Yeah, it was
for
it was
that
the
period,
fact that they dropped support for it so quickly.
Yeah,
Because
it was brutal. But I think if you'd known what you were getting into, you felt like you got suckered in and hung out to dry a little bit. But you do think, okay, it was in many ways the same premise, Virtua Racing. I'm just going to give you a boost for it's going to be a limited number of games, but is it worth it? I'd have been tempted if I'd have known what it was. Well, I was tempted because I bought it.
Yeah, I mean, we played it a lot, didn't we?
We played it a lot. I mean, we played the hell out of Virtua Racing, and I absolutely adored Doom. I mean, you go back to it now and you can't believe what you put up with. But it's like I played the hell out.
Star Wars Arcade, almost worth it on its own. It's so good.
That is a great game.
Destroy enemy fighters.
Put it another way. Say if those 4 games had come onto Mega Drive in the way Virtua Racing did, and they're all kind of SVP chip like enabled, and each of them had cost 80 quid. So in total, the full package had been like 300 quid. That's not awful. So as a stopgap, if I'd known what it was, fair enough. Luckily, I think if this and then got the Saturn, and I felt like I've been still playing the 32X right up until the point I then got my Saturn like 2 years later, I would have felt really screwed over. So
part of me also thinks, that if you put those games on an SVP, they would have been restricted to this Mega Drive's color palette, and they would have been really dithered like this Mega Drive port of Virtua Racing was. But by the same token, I think if you put those games on the Sega Saturn, you had an internally developed Sega port of Doom that isn't constrained by cartridge size. You have an internally developed port of Virtua Racing on the more powerful hardware. You've got the Star Wars Arcade developed strictly for Saturn. That would have been pretty magical, I think. If you had those instead.
Yeah, I think that's true. And it's funny, I was thinking, I was listening to some stuff about this. I was listening to your podcast about year one a couple of weeks ago as well, actually. And I was just thinking, back at the time the mags did talk a lot about Sega of Japan, Sega of America, and you got an inkling about there being sort of the differences. I definitely had an understanding that they were, they weren't kind of singing for the same hymn sheet, but you had no idea really of the conflict. I think for me, it just was Sega. I didn't really think in terms of there's 2 really quite distinct entities competing for what the vision and the strategy looks like for the next couple of years. I just had no idea of that. No. It felt more cohesive. You felt like they had a plan, trust their plan. They didn't really.
I wonder if it's because we were younger and because, a year between Street Fighter 2 on the SNES and Street Fighter 2 on the Mega Drive felt like an eternity. Whereas all this chaos that was coming through from Sega in such a short span just felt like, give us more. Like our little childhood ADD brains going,
That's the thing, but it's like we didn't care about like that kind of stuff. Like, see now as adults looking back at like the games we played when we were younger, and then you look at the backstory and there's also more people contributing memories and stories, then it becomes interesting. But it's one of my biggest pet hates in like retro community. It does my nut, and there's a fair few people do it. they retrospectively apply their adult cynicism to their childhood. It's like people who go like, I was 8 years old when I played Daytona on Saturn, and even then I couldn't stand the frame rate. And I'm like, mate, you didn't know what frame rate was when you were 8 years old. You wanted a wham bar and a fucking can of Iron Brew. You had no idea what frame rate was. Like, so it's just like you were.
I distinctly felt the lack of anti-aliasing. It was really harming. Like, did you bollocks it? I'll tell you what. I guess there's another bit as well. I mean, Div's got a Mega CD. Like what? So that would have been about a year and a bit before.
Yeah, it must have been early in '94, I would guess.
And the fact was, we didn't play a lot of games on that either. I don't think it really harmed us at that point if the library was a bit narrow. Do you know what I mean?
I think
didn't dampen our enthusiasm.
We had enough good games that we were playing to make it just like, you know, that the whole reputation the machine had. Like I would go to school and people tell me that the machine sucks, and I'm like at home playing Sonic CD, Final Fight CD, and all these kind of like amazing games. And I was like, oh, they can kind of say what they want. I'm having so much fun with this thing. It just bounces off me, if you know what I mean. I just wasn't that fun.
And we just didn't have the budget. You know, they could have released, if they'd have had 20 amazing games, we would have only bought 3 of them because we just didn't have enough money to get like everything. So if you're sitting there playing those, then of course Snatcher when it came along in what was it, 94 for us, wasn't it?
Yeah, later on,
you know, you're happy with your collection of 3-4 games. And for that period, again for me, 32X, I was happy with it, but you know, just for that period. But none of that dampened our enthusiasm at the time. You know, you look back and you think Mega CD was quite a limited UK library. Like 32X was abysmally limited library, all told. But you didn't feel that at the time. We began with 32X, I did tire of it, and you began to feel it, but none of the enthusiasm dimmed. It just felt like they're manically creative. These are those great titles on Mega CD, those great titles on 32X. It felt all right. You know what I mean? It didn't feel betrayed or any of that stuff. So
32X was when I first noticed that they were kind of killing something off, because I you know, with the Mega Drive and the Master System, it kind of overlapped massively, and they were still making Master System games in '96.
Yeah.
So now I was just like, I'm going to buy this 32X unless I'm going to support it forever. And I was saving up my money, and obviously it was like Chaotix came out. I was like, yes, another Sonic game, I'll get that. Yeah. And then kind of it just sort of just completely dried up. And then it was like seeing Virtua Fighter 2 on the Sega Saturn. And then he's like, Virtua Fighter is coming. It's coming to the 32X. And then like, by the time I had enough money for 32X, it's just like, no, it's dead.
Yeah. It's gone. It's dead, mate. Leave it. Leave it, son. Move on.
Leave it, mate.
Though one regret that I do have is when it was late 96 and they were 25 quid in game. And I should have got one then. I get in a box for, mind you, it wouldn't have been boxed by the time it made it through my teens, but
no. That is the one thing I think it's probably really not until the 360 generation I'd learned the lesson of buy cheap. When they're right at the rock bottom, just sweep them up.
Oh yeah. So I got my GameCube for 25 quid as they were clearing space for the 360s to come in. I was like, I have one of those. One of the best decisions I've ever made.
I got the crystal clear and crystal green OG Xboxes. Like, nice. They were they were in the mass sell off of 2007. But they were in the window of Game Station in Union Street, and I think it was like 40 or 50 quid each. And I was just like, why not? Yeah. Like, I was in my early 20s, like working, disposable income, paid my mum 180 quid a month dig money. The rest was mine. I was like, honestly, it's like, well, I'll have them. But James, I remember, mate, it wasn't Sam, who was it? Eddie. He's like, why are you buying them? Like, they're cheap. You've had an Xbox for years, like that. So like
sound decision. Yeah.
It's like, they're clear and they've got cool colours, so why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Never had the Halo green one, the Halo branded one. It was just a kind of standard crystal green. But it was nice.
I tell you, the only time I've come close to that for 15, 20 years now really is, and I know you guys have done this as well, when you find yourself on those Japanese auction sites and there's Saturns at 10 quid and you're like, I'll have 20, I'll have 30, put them all in.
Yeah, you went crazy.
Oh man, see, that's the thing, right? I sent like Tom Thumb messages me on WhatsApp and he goes, getting a Japanese haul, do you want anything? I'm like, oh, Tom, man, come on. Tom, don't, man. So I was on looking, I wanted to have a few Japanese games, like, was it Daytona, Virtua Cop, Knights, just kind of, again, games that resonate with me that I would like to have, because I've got the disc drive still in a Japanese Saturn, so it's nice it's still nice to slap a disc in and play it in fashion way. So I started looking on that Syndico, and I'm like, search all vendors and like that. So I sent them like, it was like Daytona, Fighting Vipers, Knights, Virtua Cop. What was the other one? There was another one, I can't remember. Anyway, so five or six games I sent through. And as I'm looking at them, it's like £2.33, like £4.50. But then they've obviously got like a fee, and then they've also got like, because like they go from the seller, so there's a shipping fee from the seller to Syndico, and then Syndico bundle it all together, and then you pay shipping again, which is what Tom pays because he's buying like 45 PS2s and umpteen collector's editions of games. But and he came back, and so I'm thinking in my head, 230 there, 450 there, a couple of games for 20 quid. I'm happy with that. And he's like, all right, buddy, that'll be 48 quid all in. And I'm like, ooh, that racked up a bit quick.
It catches you by surprise.
I was like, I'm like, shit. It's like just in a sweetie shop, man.
I just say this, the way, certain sites, gambling sites, that you can put self-imposed limits on. If you're listening, Tom, we'll just say, can we do that with you? Can we just agree?
Fun stops. Stop.
You need to do that on Japanese proxy sites.
We're limited to 50 quid, Tom, all right? Don't come here.
That's that.
But right, so we've talked a bit about where we all were in 1995, pre the Sega Saturn launch.
Can I just add one little small thing there?
Go on.
I fucking bought them. So,
you got.
That was my wife allowed me to get them as a birthday gift. So there we go.
When they come in, you have to share when they come in, mate.
That's it, mate.
Well, still buying Sega Saturn games 30 years later.
Yeah. I get a quick one to you, Dan. So, I mean, you didn't pick up 32X, and it was a bit later for Saturn. But where were you at in that period? Like, what were you playing?
99. I was Sega obsessed in 95, but I was squirreling money. I had a paper round. I didn't get pocket money. I had a paper round. It was like £12 a week. I did have moments where I would be like, I can't not have a new game, so I'd buy something like. So I bought like EA Sports Double Header, which had EA Hockey and John Madden Football. Because I loved like the 92 versions of them, but obviously I couldn't afford the new ones. But that was like 15 quid in Currys. It's like, I'll have that. I got Comic Zone with the soundtrack CD. Theme Parks. I was buying these games still cheap, so I wasn't disciplined enough to really see it through. So I was still getting Mega Drive games. I was still trying to save towards a 32X, and I was like, I'm going to get one. But by the time I actually got close to my birthday, it had died off. But Sega Saturn obviously wasn't that old by the time I had my birthday just after the launch. There was no way that I could afford that. So it's like, right, I'll save up for a bit longer, and I'll definitely get a Sega Saturn in '96. So that's kind of, I was still getting Sonic the Comic. They had a big launch around. They had the big splash around that in the comic at the time. I was still getting dedicated gamer magazines. I was getting Sega magazine. I was getting Mean Machine Sega still. So I was all in on Sega, but I just didn't have the funds to invest in the next generation. So I was just grabbing all these budget Mega Drive games. And I'm probably playing Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles over and over and over again for the rest of 1995.
That kept us going.
There's a Japanese anime that has to waiting to get made of you on your paper round with blue skies playing with your throwing papers. Blue skies. Not 12 quid. Not 12 quid.
So the bonus round is I end up in Currys, and I can't dodge the cheap Mega Drive games.
It's loser life. Yeah. Funny you mentioned about the birthdays though, and the timing of it, because that's the thing with the 32X for me. It's like my birthday's in the start of the year, so you used to play the Christmas and birthday combo with the parents. You could do one big present if you threw it all in the pot. And 32X just was at the time. Hindsight, time was bad. At the time, it seemed great. It was like, timing, it's karma. Just like sending it your way when the birthday comes around.
Yeah, but you got the money's worth. I think there was enjoyment to it. It's one of these ones where history's not kind to it, and you look at it and it's a stupid idea. They should have at least had some sort of compatibility with the Saturn, so the Saturn could play 32X carts and the 32X could play Saturn CDs through the Mega CD somehow, but there'd be like a Series X and Series S scenario where one plays worse than the other or something. That would have made more sense, but as a stopgap, it didn't. Sega at the time, 1995, they were still supporting the Master System in Europe. They were still supporting the Game Gear. They had the Sega Pico, which had launched by then, I think. They had the Saturn. They had they had the Saturn that was just launching in the West. They had the 32X. They had the Mega Drive. They had the Mega CD, and then they were like in arms race with Namco in the arcades.
Yeah,
That's proper. A great answer. I'll tell you what though. Namco in the arcade, same things I'm about to say, but one of the things that did with that multi-console support, I mean, in one way it nearly broke them, but you know what they did? They went on that massive recruitment bender and just like started just pulling in every dev and like tech person they could from the whole of Japan, people that, I've never coded before, go and have a go, all of that stuff happened because of that. Obviously mainly it was like all of that in the background and then trying to populate Saturn with some games. But you do think, it was nuts, but God, it gave rise to such a lot of stuff. I mean, you hear all the stories, like pretty much all the top games we love from that initial lineup of the early year, and all the devs say the same, don't they? It's like, they pulled me over I was doing Mega Drive games and they pulled me over, or they recruited me and I didn't have a clue what I was doing, or I was a planner and suddenly I was coding Virtua Cop. It was just, all just. But you think if they'd been Nintendo and they were like, no, let's have one console and just stick with it and just plod along for a little bit and see what happens. That craziness didn't happen. Nintendo is just discipline.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it wasn't as fun.
Yeah,
It's just Sega was just going nuts, was just so fascinating. Like every time you open like a Sega magazine, it's like, what are they doing next? And it was always something crazy, but it was just so colorful. It just made it so interesting and exciting. And it was amazing time.
That's it though. That you just think that madness of the 6 consoles all going on at the same time, it stretched them so thin and it just opened up. They had to take some risks and just loads of them paid off, right? So yeah.
Not enough, sadly, but
no, not enough. Obviously, I'm sort of skirting past the fact of what then happened.
I think part of a symptom of that was, and I suppose we'll move on to kind of the launch itself now, was just how badly planned the launch was. So, as I say, I was at the time deep in all the Sega mags. I was getting Sonic the Comic. I had a subscription, so I'd get that every fortnight. I was getting, whenever I could, I'd get like Mean Machines or Sega Official Magazine or Sega Power. Sega Power was still getting quite a lot in 95. And nowhere, and I was completely unaware of the launch date in the UK. I think even the US launch had been a surprise. So James, I think we've touched on this before, and you weren't aware. It was kind of, it appeared at your uncle's, didn't it?
I'd seen this on Bad Influence, and I've looked up it. It was season 3, episode 15, and it was aired on the 15th of December, 1994.
Nice.
You know what I mean? So, and it was that one where they had the Saturn and the PlayStation in the studio, and of course Andy Crane's over, giving it the usual stuff that we've slagged them for, The Sega Saturn set to supersede the stopgap 32X. It plays games on disc as well as cart. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. It's like you look back, no. It's like you look back now and you go, it's a fucking lie.
Listen, I just got to say, you channeling Andy Crane is one of the most accurate but creepy things I've ever seen in my life. It's so on the money. It's just like, you know what you could do now. We know you can do the voice of the character. Make him say some positive stuff about Saturn, and we'll go and change history.
we'll redub it with positive. Yeah. This is Sega Saturn. This is absolutely wonderful games console coming from Sega. It's amazing. Virtua Fighter is the best game I've ever played.
Oh mate, it's like an episode of Black Mirror, different reality. Yeah.
I'd seen it on that, but it's a funny thing because I remember it more for it being like a version of Virtua Fighter that they were playing on a machine you could have at home. It wasn't like I knew, ooh, that's the Saturn that was getting spoken about. It was just like the Saturn was like the thing. Like I heard the name Sega Saturn, but it didn't click in. I'd go, oh, that's that thing that's coming out. It's just like, and obviously they show you some rather grainy CRT recorded footage of them playing it, and they keep jumping about like fucking Jack in the Box. Like, mate, nobody can play a game jumping about like that. That's just not happening. And then they very quickly move over to the PlayStation, and Violet Berlin's giving it. You know, I'm not going to do a Violet Berlin impression. I hate to say, you know, but she's giving it. You know, the games come in these funky black discs, and I just did one, try to do one anyway.
It's good.
But you know, it was like, what was it they said as well? Andy Crane says that, you know, you can save game data on it. Comes with Ridge Racer, and it's like you look back and you go, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
It's like those are lies.
There was a lot of lies there, but obviously they spent more time talking about the funky, cool black discs and how amazing Ridge Racer was. Like Virtua Fighter did very much get glossed over, but to me, watching it, because I'd been playing it, like I'd seen it in the arcade, I'd kind of started going that kind of late 94-ish. Into kind of 95, and 95 was whenever we really started going kind of frequently, but I knew what Virtua Fighter was, and then obviously see a version of it that you could play in the home, but I had no idea when this thing was coming. Like, it's not as if I was going, right, get me one of them on this date. It was like it showed up another few times on Bad Influence. I think they featured it again, that series, and then they had it again in Series 3 later on whenever it eventually came to the UK, and Andy Crane opens with, good games on Sega Saturn have been hard to come by.
I can hear it. It's etched into my brain.
It is, yeah.
You know, and then they show the big three, and they've got the Gladiators, I've got is it Vogue, and she's like playing Virtua Cop, and she's like up here like that.
Oh, right,
like,
against the screen. Yeah.
Like, and then also they pan back and show you the gameplay, but because she's playing with a light gun, the screen's flashing. So see, anybody who has epilepsy, they probably took a fit watching that episode, right? And then it gets to Rhino, and he's playing Sega Rally, right? And he's with the arcade racer, and he's like, yeah, Sega Rally, it's really realistic. Like, mate, stop turning the wheel. It's like, and he's bouncing off the walls
all
like,
over the show.
I'm like, mate, that's not giving a good impression at all. But you know, so they featured it quite heavily. But you know, also by the time that they'd shown Sega Rally and stuff, I was well entrenched in the Saturn by that point. But it was just the idea of getting a machine that could play Virtua Fighter was kind of mind blowing. And then the old story that I'm not going into in detail because people have heard it about 3,000 times on this channel. But you know, obviously getting surprised with it at my uncle's house, and just again, the reason why it looked so arcade perfect at the time is because, like, my uncle being the mad techie that he was, like, he had surround sound, they had like the best of gear, like Denon amps and Bowers and Wilkins speakers and like rear projection TVs, 50-inch buggers. He had the whole shooting match set up. So I've come in and been surprised by this Saturn hooked up to a 5.1 running on a 50-inch rear projection TV. Like, if it had been a cabinet sitting there, it wouldn't have looked at it. Literally was when I walked in.
Yeah.
From what I was seeing in booths on that deluxe cabinet, it just transferred over. Like, in my mind, I didn't see a difference. And that's why whenever people retrospectively go back and pull up the clipping and stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, but you can see that now. You can be critical now with the decades that have passed since, but like, go back and imagine what it must have been like to see that at that point in time. And it was just mind blowing. It was just
it was mind blowing. Yeah.
Yes, the little details were missing, but the big things were there, like fluid, moving people, fighting, interacting. That was there. That's what mattered. Yeah.
But
I felt that kid. That was heartfelt. I like it.
Yeah. I've got mine up there as well. But obviously, Gibbs, you also got yours on launch day. So
I did. Yeah.
I think it seems like whenever we catch up, it seems like you really had your finger on the pulse on on release dates or when people even had stock that they were holding over.
I know, yeah.
for the
Well, no,
release.
I was gonna say I was well aware of like the Saturn because of like thankfully even though it seemed initially so far out of reach, like I kind of had the idea in my head that it was going to be like 350, 400 in that kind of price bracket, and this was about the summer of 1994. I remember. Like, it was completely out of reach for me. But then my sister handed me did a little favor for me. So she plugged a Super Nintendo cable into the back of my Mega CD and basically blew it up. And I got an insurance payout of like about 250 quid or something like that. And then I was suddenly like, hang on a minute. If I saved that money, my parents very generously give me 100 quid for Christmas and then 100 quid for my birthday, which both came before the launch of the Saturn, which I thought at the time was going to be September 95. I was like, you know what? I can get a Saturn. And it was like, I remember I was so hyped. You know that song, Something Good by Utah Sage? Do you remember
Yeah.
that one? I remember I was listening to that song at the yeah. Exactly. And I was like, yeah, man, something good is gonna happen here. I'm getting a Sega Saturn. And I always, whenever I hear that song, I think of that moment. It was just like it became the soundtrack of me getting the Sega Saturn. And then yeah, so basically I was following all the news right through. And then I think it was Sega magazine. Actually, I looked it up earlier. It was issue 19. I just opened it one day and it was the July issue. And there, right as you open the page, I open the front of the magazine, there just was one page, Saturn out in 3 weeks or something like that. And it was like it come like right after the American surprise launch. And like so I think it was actually already out there, but we had to wait like 3 weeks. And I think when I got the magazine, I think it wasn't even that long. I think it was like about 2.5 weeks at that point or something. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's like it's nearly here. It's like, you know what I mean? And I was like, right, where am I going to get it from? And so I remember I found up like Electronics Boutique or whatever, and they wanted like a 50 quid deposit, which I didn't have to hand because basically I was like 15 years old and my mum was storing all this money in her bank account. So I tried Dixon's and they would reserve me one without a deposit. So
I've
that
just
was
got
where,
this image of like if like if emergency break glass, it's like if the
yeah.
Saturn launch break glass.
Yeah, it was so like that though. It was like I just couldn't, my mind, it was literally blown. I could not believe that it was suddenly skipping like 3 months forward or something like that. It was so exciting. And yeah, so basically uh the the days just ticked by like it felt like the longest couple of weeks of my life. It was like insane, like just absolutely painful, like just waiting for this time to count down. But yeah, then it got to like the Friday beforehand, and because it was a Saturday, I think the 8th, wasn't it? And like me and Bedjo and a couple of our other friends, we wanted to make like a bit of an event out of it. So we like put up a tent in my back garden and stuff. And we always like stayed in it the night before, and then we were going off to get it the first thing in the morning. So it was like just the dumb things that you do when you're young and that. But it was like a laugh and made it memorable. So yeah, we
So
went.
I'm just picturing like the other
What?
launches, like the big queues for Dreamcast launch or
Yeah,
PS2 launch. This is the UK Saturn launch equivalent.
yeah. We technically
Tent
camped
in your
out
back
for it.
garden.
Yeah, yeah.
Us lot
Just not
staying in the
outside
tent.
the shop. Yeah, but
You just
no.
get some
all hear-
Americans listening going, so wait a minute, we queue outside the store to get the console, but you guys like you camp out in your back garden, then go to the store?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we
we
sort of
might
did
want
it
to nip in
wrong.
for a drink in the night, or we might get
Yeah, yeah.
scared. So
Very creepy if a fox comes around. But
Oh,
anyway.
but you all arrive and it's like opening up like Sega Saturn out today. You all here for Sega Saturn? Yeah, we all are. How many are you buying? One.
Yeah. Yeah, they're rubbing their hands to get cash back.
And they'll see the squaddies waiting in the line. Like, here we go, man. 400 quid a pop. It's got to be a
Yeah.
good bonus days come early, boys. When are you?
yeah. So yeah, but we went down to Dixon's. It was in Eastbourne, and yeah, we got it. Like there it was, like handed over the doubloons, and it was like whoa. I mean, because that was so much money at the time as well. Like the fact, like I was 15 years old or whatever, and I managed to get that money together was just pretty crazy. Actually, now I think back, but then I hit a hurdle because they didn't have any software in stock. So like it had Virtua Fighter in the actual box, but I was like, "Where's Daytona?" And they were like, "Oh, we ain't got any in stock." And it's like they didn't have anything else, and I was like,
Which
"Oh,
makes
mate!" And so like there I go trekking round, tail between my legs to Electronics Boutique, which I turned down for the 50 quid deposit. And like I remember the manager guy, like they had them in there, and so I grabbed a copy of Daytona, and he was like, "You got a Saturn?" And I was like, yeah, I just got it at like Dixon's, and he kind of looked really disappointed at me that I had bought it somewhere else. I was like, I'm sorry, can I still have Daytona, please?
You wouldn't let me pre-order it for free, so get it
Exactly.
round you.
Yeah, that's all on him. So
you can't underplay that though. I genuinely remember at the time thinking, how the hell 400 quid was a lot of money to an adult in 95, but to us that was, I mean,
that was serious.
it
Yeah.
was serious
I'm
money.
just thinking about this crew of kids, man, walking around the town centre with like this Sega Saturn under their bag and under arm with a Dixon's bag, big red Dixon's bag,
Yeah.
like going from store to store to find games. Like, what's up to see?
I remember you said, what was the number for the amount on release? 5,000 Saturns or something. It was tiny, wasn't it? It was like, and I was thinking, obviously, between us, well, Tina, I didn't have it, but two of them. I mean, it's actually quite a tiny number. You think we was part of a properly tiny crew, but well, you were. I got to check something because we went back. I can't remember why. Your mum made us wait for ages, didn't she? And we were like sat in the car park in the back seat of her car. And I remember this. Obviously, the image I've got, it was really gloomy because it was a car park.
Yeah, it was
I
a
can
super
remember
dark car park, I remember.
whether-
It was particularly dark for some reason.
whether you were doing it subconsciously or whether you were doing it as a joke. I can't remember. But I can picture you properly hugging it like this. And like, so yeah.
I had
That
to go
was
for a lot to get like go for a Christmas and a birthday, not getting anything, and just having to save that money.
Yeah.
That was painful for a 15-year-old kid, you know. It
frugal.
was like,
Yeah.
yeah. I gotta say, like, I mean, I did like think for a brief time about getting a 32X because the money was like burning your hole in your pocket. You don't have much, like, you know, when you're a
Yeah.
kid, it's like you just want the newest thing there and then, don't you?
Yeah,
But
tell me
it
about
was
it.
yeah, it was pretty rough, kind of like just because it did feel like it was like close to a year, like of just holding on to this money before I
Yeah.
actually got the Saturn. But then in retrospect, the payoff has just been amazing
And I
because
think
like
the three of us know how your mind was working as well. Shall I go on? Nah, let's get Bedroll to get one. He can do that.
I was well up for you getting it, so so yeah, get the two X, they're great.
It's gonna be great, yeah.
see that what you were saying there about like you got that mag and it was like, oh, it's 2.5 weeks ago and it felt like so long. I can totally relate to that with my Japanese Dreamcast because
Yeah.
like I was like saving money up for it because at that time when I was a student and I worked in Safeway part time, so I was putting money away, but my mum and my uncle were going to give me money towards it, you know, for my birthday to go to CE games and pick it up. But like they surprised me by giving me the money. They says, we'll give you a month early. So that's how I got it in April instead of like the following month. And I remember I had set up on Microsoft Paint, I'd put together the jankiest like wallpaper, like homemade wallpaper ever, like in like Times New Roman days until Dreamcast. Then I'd got this picture of a Dreamcast off the internet
Yeah.
and just put it on there, and then like every day I would go in and edit it, and so
That's amazing.
it would take it down a day, reset the wallpaper every day. I really shouldn't have done it. It just made the wait even worse, man. Like dial up, getting a Dreamcast image by dial up internet was challenging as well. So
Right.
oh man, but that was just, but that wait was excruciating. So I can imagine like like how that must
Yeah.
have felt.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
dial
it
up,
was
that dial up
painful.
internet. Because I remember in that build up, we were downloading that Sonic Adventure trailer, weren't we? Do you remember? Did I get it from the school internet on
Oh yeah,
dial
you
up?
like
And it was
daisy
like,
chained it across
it
loads of discs or
was
something, did
something like
you?
8 megabytes, and it took about 4 hours to do. So anyway, yeah,
So you got the Sega Saturn and you got
I got
Daytona the same
Daytona.
day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I was basically like, like Panzer Dragoon hadn't come out. I mean, inside the box there was this little pamphlet, and you could send off for a demo of Panzer Dragoon, and you got like it was like the first level. So I did that, but that didn't come for like a couple of weeks or something. But
That's it there.
I was
It was
so
packed
hyped.
in.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that
nice.
is in mint condition. That
Yeah,
So,
nice.
but
Look at
the
that.
best thing is it's got Valkyrie and the Hornet from the launch
Yeah.
advert as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, that's what I loved there. That picture of the Hornet, it looked cool.
But I love this little spiel on the inside as well. Congratulations on joining the world of Sega Saturn.
Yeah.
This is just a preview of the capital letters most expensive Sega game ever developed, Panzer Dragoon. The full
Nice.
game with all 7 episodes will be landing in stores at the end of August. Don't miss it.
Mm,
Nice, nice.
that's good advice.
Yeah, it is good advice. They should be ballsy. Yeah,
Yeah.
most expensive. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, but because we were so like into the arcade, like, I just kind of went for those Virtua Fighter and Daytona combo because, basically I wanted Daytona like so badly. And it's like, like you say now you can look back and be down about certain elements, but like to me that was Daytona coming home. Like the playability of it was just so incredible, and I loved that machine so much. It was like I just couldn't even look twice, like yeah, like at the PlayStation and the concept of like having to have Ridge Racer or something like that, which I know like is such a big game and people love it and all this stuff, but there was no choice to me. Like it was like it was Saturn and it was Daytona all the way, and I don't regret it for
nah,
one
we'd
second.
spent a year and a bit going into that arcade,
Mm.
mocking that Ridge Racer arcade, and just
Yeah.
looking down on it. It was it was real. It was the butt of a lot of jokes, and it was physically relegated. Daytona was right there. It was the
Yeah.
dominant one. And Ridge Racer was over there. It was, and I know this. We weren't immune from the hype for PlayStation building up and stuff as well. And we could see kind of even right early on, you could see how much like press and attention
Yeah,
it was getting.
yeah. It was getting some
But we
love,
were
wasn't
looking
it?
at it going, why? Like that gets Ridge Racer, we get Daytona. Absolutely no competition in certainly I think you were the same to Sony. It was just
Yeah.
I just thought it was like a sort of joke thing that they would get such a crappy game and be like pushing it. And I know that people love Ridge Racer out there. I
Yeah.
still to this day don't get it. But at the time it was such a streets ahead game. We were getting Daytona. That was such a huge thing.
I must admit, I think I do appreciate Ridge Racer more now.
Mm.
Back then, it was almost an unknown to me. I hadn't played the arcade game. I was just like, why would you play that and not Daytona? So
Mm.
it was kind of second fiddle for me as well. So I didn't understand the hype behind it. So
Yeah.
James, when did you play Daytona? Because I know your uncle was grabbing games fairly regularly, but I don't
That's
think I've
one. No, I never bought that one. I
no.
didn't get
Oh,
I didn't get
surprise.
Daytona on Saturn until I got mine. So obviously I got my own one like Christmas '96.
Mm,
And I picked up a second-hand copy in Game Zone in Partick.
nice.
And this was like obviously way after the fact of playing Sega Rally. So Daytona didn't make the best first impression on me
Mm.
because I'd played Sega Rally since.
Yeah.
But it's only as the years have kind of gone by and I've played more Daytona in the arcade and I've kind of put time into, and I think we're quite fortunate that we're able to look at older games and not have the bias of what's come since.
Mm,
Like I think there's a lot of people that can't do that. They see games as old and new, and there's a line in the sand, and they can't look back with the appreciation. But that's what I've done with Daytona. And whenever you just sit and play it, it's like, no, you can see like whenever this was on like launch day, I can imagine people like taking this home, like I did whenever I played VF. And you're like, now this must have fucking blew people's minds whenever they put this on, because again, you're bringing home one of the most cutting-edge arcade games. It's the first Model 2 port on the system at a time whenever developers were still getting to grips with 3D development on console. No one had a clue what they were doing. People like you guys have said, we're getting pulled for this project, for that project to learn on the job how to code this. And they've put this on there. Like, this little 400 quid box has absolutely no right on launch day. And people say as well, like, oh, it was rushed. And in the video that will be out tomorrow at the time as you're watching this, when I talk about the launch titles, and like people say like Daytona was rushed. And I'm like, well, it actually wasn't, because the console came out in November. Daytona didn't come out in Japan until April. So it was out 5 months after. That's not a rushed game. And then people go, oh, well, I mean, if the Saturn had been its original September launch date, then Daytona would have been better. I'm like, but better how? They weren't going to take it back in and retool it to make the draw distance any better. Like, those things were hardwired because of
they're baked in.
It wasn't the limitations of the machine. It was the limitations of the skill set that people had at that time trying to make these games. So Daytona, it didn't impress me as much as like Sega Rally. It didn't have the impact because of what had come on the Saturn since. But no,
I do think that's a harder comparison at the time. It was, or a harder thing to stomach after playing Sega Rally to go Daytona. Because we've talked before, like coming from the arcade to home on Daytona. Yeah, you could see it was different. I wasn't massively put off by the frame rate and stuff. I know Tibbs mentioned it, but we were expecting it. You know, we weren't expecting it to be the arcade. We were comparing it to the other console games that were out, not the arcade, and it was still mind blowing. But then when you then played Sega Rally and your expectations for console were then set, I remember at the time finding it then harder to play Daytona because I'd felt the smoothness and it was like
but I played Sega Rally first and hated it. I think I've told this story before.
I seem to remember you weren't a fan of the handle.
But I hadn't played Sega Rally in the arcade. I'd played Daytona, but obviously I'd been raised on a plethora of like Mega Drive games like Super Hang-On and Road Rash, and I'm trying to think of what other ones I would have played. But there's kind of like a lot of like understeer. And so, like, when you're going around a corner, you're really like having to hold right, like Lotus Turbo Challenge or something like that, for example. Where you're gripping the end of the things, you're holding down the button, and you're kind of leaning into it, like, trying to get around the corner. So I went into, I think I've told this story before, but I went into the Sony shop, and they had this giant, it must have been 100 inches plus TV. They had a PlayStation, they had a queue of people, and I played Destruction Derby, and I played it, and I tried to stay on. It's like, no, you got to leave now. You can't have another go. So I went out there, and I went from Destruction Derby, and I went into from the Sony shop, and I went to Argos, which is like across the shopping centre, and they had the Sega Saturn pod in there. And obviously, Destruction Derby again probably plays a lot like those old games. So there's a lot of like understeer, and you have to it's really stiff the way it turns. And I got onto Sega Rally, and I was like, all right, there's a bend coming. I was like, easy lefts, first turning in the game. So I was like, yep, I'll hold that turn button. Just went boom, straight into the side of the wall. And I've tried to correct it, and obviously I'm overcorrecting. I'm just bouncing off every wall. Like, this game looks beautiful, but it plays like shit. So it's just like, I was just like, I love the pad. I love how this game looks. It looks so much better than that crappy PlayStation game. We're definitely getting a Saturn, but I don't think I'll get this game. What happened and we're talking 96 now, so we're not talking launch, but I got my Saturn in 96 with my birthday money and everything I'd saved up. And it came with Sega Rally, Virtua Fighter 2 and Daytona. And at the time, obviously, I knew that Sega Rally was well thought of. And I was just like, well, yeah, I'll have it. But I went into Daytona and I played Daytona. I preferred Daytona for the first few months. I thought this is the best racing game ever made. And then after I, played the hell out of Daytona and Virtua Fighter 2 and Nights into Dreams to an extent, because I just got that, I kind of went back to Sega Rally, and then it clicked.
Okay.
Oh my God.
It is hard. It is hard though. You forget because obviously we've all been playing it now for so long. You forget. I can remember about the bouncing off the walls, and it's pretty brutal. Like it only takes a clip, and you lose all your speed and all that.
I still do that when I try and play with the wheel. It's like when I try and play with that wheel, I'm like, it's like I've never played it before. Complete amateur.
I think we've all seen that start menu, quit, yes, no, restart.
Yeah, million
More times than we'd care. But yeah, I played Sega Rally first and preferred Daytona at least initially. Obviously, not so much now, but I still think Daytona was an amazing. And when you look back as a first generation game, I thought it was impressive. Considering what it was doing in the home, just like you guys were all just saying. It was the most advanced. Like first time I saw Daytona in the arcade, my mind was absolutely blown. I thought it was otherworldly. I thought it was photorealistic. I'd gone through ports from the arcade through the Mega Drive, Super Nintendo. We'd seen them on like the 3DO, and 3DO wasn't even able to do an arcade perfect version of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. So it's just like arcade ports had to be compromised. That was just the accepted thing.
It was the way of it, wasn't it?
I just think with Daytona as well, though, it had some serious popping, but it was popping in some serious architecture. The massive sonic wall, the swoopy mountain twisty bit. I don't know what the proper name is for that. It's just the mountain twist.
I'm going to get something to read something out. Right, hold back a minute.
Yeah. Whereas I remember looking at Ridge Racer, and the frame rate was smoother, and it's like pretty fluid. But I thought that, and I'm not rewriting this, we would talk about this at the time. I thought that looked more like a tech demo because it's just big grey boxes, lots of just grey boxes, either, because the cityscape and the level design is just so bland. It's just such a boring, grey, monotone looking game. I thought that always looked like a real kind of just tech demo. And at least Daytona was trying something, And
it was chucking around so many like other cars on the track and stuff like that as well. Like the 40 cars, isn't it? Or something on 7 Speedway.
Yeah. Don't want to get too into bashing Ridge Racer, but you go through and it's like you got that big building. It's like that's great. You go into the tunnel, and then you come out the tunnel, and then you've got the bridge, and you go around the mountain, and then you go in the other tunnel, and then the quality just nosedives. It's just like we run out of money to design the track.
Wow, what a start! This is just what I wanted to see.
It's just grey turns, and like there's no visibility anywhere. It's just so awful. Like track design. It looks terrible, and that wasn't impressive. It always like it brought you in with like the first half of the track, and then the rest is like, you don't really care.
They've already thought they'll have given up by now. They'll be playing. They'll have gone off and played it.
Well, I don't want to
bash it too much. I get it. I get people. I get why people like it, and I can see it. I've tried so many times, and I can't.
One of the weirdest things I ever saw someone doing in the arcade, right, is if they were going round a corner to the right, he would like. This guy, he was like turning left, and the whole car was like spinning like 360 degrees, and then like kind of clicking in almost into the right direction on the road to the right there.
That's a mechanic right there.
It was the most peculiar thing. And like, I mean, I got to say, I didn't see a whole lot of people play Ridge Racer because the machine in the arcade was next to Daytona. So it's like the crowd was around Daytona. But like, I did watch like, this one guy doing this peculiar thing. Like, maybe I should try it one day, see if it works on the PlayStation version or something. But it just looked so odd.
So what you got then, James? You went off and got a Dreamcast mag.
Yes, what I have here, Andy Mackey very kindly sent me a couple of Dreamcast magazines. I believe he was looking to start doing a collection like he did with the official Sega Saturn magazine, but he decided to back out of that.
It's quite an undertaking.
Aye, but so he sent me a couple of Dreamcast mags up, and this is the May issue from 2001. Which, as you see here, has the review of Daytona USA 2001.
I know where this is going.
Right. This review is by Casper Field, who at this point, DC UK's former editor. DC UK died by this point. And this goes to show the sort of the disdain for Saturn for anyone who wasn't from official Sega Saturn magazine. So in the mid-90s, arcades up and down the land played host to a battle that divided the nation's gamers. Namco's Ridge Racer and Sega's Daytona USA had arrived, blah, 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 blah. But while Ridge Racer's conversion to PlayStation was a happy one, selling an awful lot of machines for Sony, I'm getting there, Sega's Saturn version of Daytona USA was, graphically at least, pretty much just awful. Scenery popping up out of nowhere was pretty much a fact of 3D gaming life 5 years ago, but Saturn Daytona pushed, or rather pulled, new boundaries. Tracks often appeared so close to the car it was hard to know which way to turn next. Sega's poor old 32-bit console simply couldn't hack it.
That's harsh.
Get in
The tracks don't pop up right in front of the car. You can clearly see where you're meant to go.
Yeah,
Is
totally.
he playing Gale Racer?
I
yeah,
know,
yeah.
mate. Oh. So sorry, Andy. Thanks for the mag. That was a kind of a symbolic throw.
Yeah. Oh,
I'll keep it good, mate. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, my friend. I remember actually, we had this friend called Devin who was like, he wasn't like a gamer or anything really, but he was really hyped for when I got a Saturn with Daytona, and the way he described it was like the top of the screen isn't quite as good, and I was thinking like, what does he mean by the top of the screen? It's like the only thing I can think of is if he was talking about the popping, but he was sort of like, it actually wasn't really registering that much with him. And he actually played it so much he got pretty good. Like I remember he had one particular track. I think his was the 7.7 Speedway where he held the records on my Saturn for a long time. So, yeah, we all kind of had our tracks that we were really good at.
He was a good test bed, wasn't he? Someone who wasn't influenced by reading anything.
Yeah.
Wasn't really paying attention to any hype.
He was just seeing it for what it was.
He just played it in the arcades. Now he's playing at home, and he loved it. So
yeah.
I don't know. Well, I know it's not that simple.
Considering you move around the track at like 300 kilometers an hour, it doesn't pop in that much, and you can see far enough ahead. The only time it's really egregious is when you've got really complex geometry, whether it's Sonic's Mountain, whether it's the bridge over Dinosaur Canyon, or some of like the big blocks in Seaside Street Galaxy. They're just it's noticeable. Yes. Is it ugly? A little bit. Does it mean that you can't see the track? No, I never had a problem seeing the track. When he said that when I was reading a review that said it's played with popping, I was like, I can see it. I don't think it's that bad. I've been watching bushes like slowly pop into view on Road Rash and Super Hang-On, but but so Daytona then did. Anyone here play any of the other games, any of the other launch games during the first year? Obviously, the Clockwork Knight, Victory Goal. They're kind of the unsung heroes, I suppose. We could talk about I think we probably played them now. But James, you're nodding. Did you manage to play either or both of those?
So Clockwork Knight, I played a demo on the bootleg sampler, right? But Victory Goal, my uncle rented it from Blockbuster for a weekend. Man, it was great fun. You've got to remember, I'm coming for the Amiga, right? And there was a lot of good football games on the Amiga. Kickoff to Sensei Soccer, Manchester United in Europe. I'm joking.
It always baffled me. Why did they call that? I know that's what they themed it around, but it's like alienate most of the rest of the like football fans in the country.
What was that called on the Mega Drive? Because it was a pretty decent looking game.
So on the Mega Drive, it was kind of retooled into European club soccer.
That's it.
Superb game. It's so many little details. You had the people taking their tracksuits off and putting them on when they're on the suspension warming up. It was brilliant. But anyway,
Victory Goal was just like, again, it's a fact that it runs so smooth. Like also you get 3D pitch, but the 2D sprites for the players, which was again, say this in the video for tomorrow. It was a good move by Sega because the early 3D football games, man, they were rough. Like FIFA 96, even on PS1. It ran better on PS1 than it did on Saturn, but it was still like there were still cracks. Like it was still sometimes you would have players would run right past the ball. Like you would be fighting with a D-pad to try and go back. Like Chuckleballs, it's back there, it's back there. It's like and it's like
it was true. You had to have like a gentleman's agreement with your mates, didn't you? That when it did a glitch, you'd look through it and you'd let them have the ball back or whatever. We had
After you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And I remember like that your mates would have the same agreement, but then if you went and played another group of friends and the rules were a bit different, you're like, we don't do that. No, if that happens, then we yeah.
But
We had to,
yeah. You did. It was like you ran by the ball, like there was, and the ball always felt like even if you tweaked the camera angle, the ball always looked a little bit too small for the players. But, like, and in a way, I suppose in Victory Goal, the ball's quite big, but always felt like the passing game in Victory Goal was just like solid. You could just zip passes into feet, whip crosses in. Favorite one, rattle the crossbar, knock in the rebound, works every time.
Nice.
But it's got that cheesy soundtrack as well, right? Which just works. I know you can turn it off, but it kind of loses the charm if you turn it off. And obviously, you've got the kind of the big screens in the stadium with the cheesy celebrations, the animations for the goals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's got a shitload of charm. And as I say, coming for the Amiga, it was like, whoa, it's so colourful, the sprites are so big, and the stadiums are pure detailed. Like, it's an actual stadium. It's not just someone drawing little stands around the side.
Right, yeah.
But that was great. Great fun.
I mean, you were flying solo, Dibs, really well. I mean, I didn't get mine till the following Christmas, Christmas 96. So for 18 months-ish, you were flying solo all the game. You didn't get either of those two, though, did you? I don't think.
I got Clockwork Night, but not at that time. It was, I mean, like in the same issue where it had that news that the Saturn was coming out in Sega magazine. They were already showing off stuff like Virtua Fighter 2 and things like that. So I was kind of starting to hold on to whatever extra money I had, like waiting for when those games were coming out. So yeah, I didn't get Victory Girl or Clockwork Night, wasn't it?
I never really had the hype for Clockwork Night. I remember like the pictures and the screenshots in the magazine, like sort of saying, "Oh, this scenery actually falls over and comes towards you and stuff." And I guess it was just a little bit like, yeah, but it's a platform. I'm just not in that space anymore. You know, it's like 3D.
Yeah, it was not too bad though. Like I think I heard an episode. You guys were saying it was like Toy Story before Toy Story.
Yeah, it was came out the same year, which is a massive missed opportunity. They really didn't capitalize on. I've got a massive soft spot for Clockwork Night. I really enjoy it. I just think it's just pure fun. You know, it's not overly difficult. I think the difficult is just right. The only problem with the original Clockwork Night is it's the old Sonic 3 and Knuckles thing because it's cut in half.
Yeah,
because when you start Clockwork Night 2, it starts off where the first game ends, so you kind of have to play them both for the full experience. But you know, as far as a next gen console launch title is concerned, I think it's great. I mean, it's better than anything that we've seen on any of the current gen of consoles from the Xbox Series and PS5. But no, I thought it was a great little platformer.
I think going back to it, I'm more fond of it. I just mean at the time, I don't know, of the launch. I think we were just looking at the arcades. And
we were so hyped up from the arcades that it was like, you know, and like I say, like the next thing on the horizon was more arcade conversions with Virtua Fighter 2 and stuff like that. So.
I must admit that's what I wanted more than anything was more arcade ports. But I did enjoy looking at the other stuff as well, like Panzer Dragoon obviously will come a few weeks later. And I was looking up just now who the composer is on Victory Goal. I don't know why I've not looked it up before. I've always thought that it was Jun Snow or Snowy, however you pronounce it, who is obviously the composer behind, you know, much of Sonic Adventure, Sonic 3. He does the Angel Island one. He does Soul on Desert for Sega Rally 2. It's that guitar riff is just so distinctive, you just know it's him. So, it's but Victory Goal again, I think it's much better than any other football game that was around that year, or maybe even kind of the following year until we got Worldwide Soccer 97. Don't think we even had ISS then. But just a quick go around. It's kind of, we'll do like quick fire. I'm going to ask you all what your favorite launch game was. So let's start with you, James. I don't think we're all going to know the answer.
What's your fighter?
Go on in. Dibs?
It's got to be Daytona, I think.
Pedro?
Yeah, it is big time Daytona. Yeah.
I think I would probably go with Virtua Fighter. I think.
There's the last minute equaliser for the Sega guys.
It's hard to pick between the two, but That like Virtua Fighter was it for me. I was so into Street Fighter at the time, and yeah. But yeah, I think a solid set of four games really, and then obviously you got Daytona that came out after. Sorry, not Daytona. Panzer Dragoon came out.
Yeah, fast
You know,
follower. Not quite
fast.
there, but fast follower. Yeah.
It was due the end of the month, but came out. What was it? Was it end of July that it was due, James?
So it was meant to come out end of August. So the EU release date. This is all for the video tomorrow. Don't I talk too much about what's in the video tomorrow? I need to watch it.
Tease it.
Tease me. Oh, whether that comfy.
It's in there.
It's in there. It's so it was August 30th for the EU, but in the UK we got it on August 18th. And during the kind of research for the video, basically I found a newspaper clipping on Sega Retro, which is from the Daily Mirror on that day, August 18th, with Panzer Dragoon, with new and out today. That's how Sega announced the game was coming in the Daily Mirror that day.
Yeah.
So $49.99. So we got it on the 18th. So not too long after, just basically about 5 weeks after launch, 5-6 weeks after launch.
Do you know, that shows how far out of touch I was, because even though I was getting Sonic the Comic and even though I was getting the occasional magazine, I wasn't getting them regularly. The first time I actually saw a Sega Saturn and knew that it was available in the UK was when I went into Electronics Boutique in Watford, and they had a Sega Saturn and they had Panzer Dragoon playing on the monitor. So
Yeah.
I was obviously a month or so off the pace. I was like, oh wait, it's out. When did that happen? I think in Sonic the Comic is like, oh, this is coming out soon, and here's the box, and here's all the peripherals and all of that stuff. So yeah,
I tell you though, that's a great first experience, though, isn't it? I mean, you walk in, if the first time you see it moving is Panzer Dragoon.
That's quite an impression, I bet.
Yeah, well, it's crazy, and I suppose if you think about it, if they actually had the stock was constrained massively. Obviously it was in the US. If you watch kind of Pandemonium's videos, they illustrate it quite well that they had that. It didn't even get to parts of the USA for ages, and we were especially constrained. I've been trying to look at how many consoles we got in the UK. It's somewhere between 5 and 10,000. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
If they actually had the consoles to sell, if you're going into Electronics Boutique and you're seeing Panzer Dragoon, and PlayStation is still months away, it kind of makes you think, you could have probably sold a few then if you actually had the units to sell. If you hadn't used all those SH2s on making worthless 32Xs.
Oh man, yeah.
I mean, so someone will come in the comments, so I'll just caveat that now. Yes, we know the SH2s that were in the 32X were lower clock speed. Thank you, we know that.
I'd say though, here's a nugget of a different history as well, though, because that back in the day, I didn't know anything about that sort of cannibalizing the chips and stuff. But I learned that from the Sega guys. I remember one of the first episodes you also listened to, and I was thinking, oh, that's a good fact. These guys know their stuff, don't they? So there you go. It's a history of a different type. There you go.
I had to really dig around for the interview where someone said that, because I always suspected it, but it's one of those things like, well, I need to make sure it's right before I start spouting shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, someone said, obviously, it's the chips were manufactured differently, but they were still taking up, materials and taking up time in the manufacturing process.
That's it. There's still only so much production you can get out of a chip producing plant. You get these bottlenecks. You can tell I don't know a lot about it, but it's so true. This is still a limited resource. So
can I want to add something? This again, it's in the video, but I want to talk about this demo. This Panzer Dragoon demo. I don't mind mentioning this on here. So the thing is, this was like a kind of pack in, right? So it's like in July, and the full game's coming out in August. Now, by the time that we're getting Saturn, the game's already out in the US. It was a launch title in the US. It's been out in Japan, right? But while doing the research for that video, I discovered that this demo disc is actually based on the very first Japanese demo disc called Panzer Dragoon U Hibaihin, which stands for not for resale. And it's got several kind of differences from the retail version. So you'll know this in that desert stage. Whenever you start, you fight the sandworms, you're facing backwards, you spin round, there's a rock formation on the right-hand side, and you basically have a swarm of the pink kind of feathered creatures. Then you move on a bit further, you get a second swarm of those creatures. Then you fly on a bit more, and then before you enter the cave, you've got a swarm of insects. Right, you take those down, then you go into the cave, and from there on, you work your way through. Blah blah blah. In that demo, the first swarm of pink feathered creatures, you get them. The distance between that part of the stage and the cave is a lot shorter. And the second wave of pink feathered creatures are actually part of the swarm of insects before you enter the cave. What that does is it means that when you exit the cave, you don't get that as you exit the cave, right?
Really?
You don't get that because the track has obviously been, and again, the soundtrack being composed to footage of the game.
Yeah.
Is that my thinking is that basically whenever they've played it back, the music kicks in, that crescendo kicks in when you're fighting the two giant sandworms, right? But I think it's more impactful, which is I think what Sega did, and Yoshitaka Azuma, the composer, probably thought as well that no, have that kicking in as you go out the cave into the light. And that's why what they've done is they've basically taken the pink feather creatures out of the wave of insects, made them a second separate wave, and drawn the level out a bit just by enough time because I timed it to see if it worked. And the time it, yeah, see, that's sado. And it actually does work with the music. So that's what that's my theory. I can't prove it, but that's my theory that's what they did is that the first run they've had it that the music kicks in whenever you fight the two giant worms before the prototype dragon. But for the final game, they've probably thought, no, that atmosphere's better whenever it builds going out the cave and into the light. And then that's why they've changed it.
It's a proper fascinating nugget because anyone who's played that, the timing is such a big deal with the music to the game. It's so cinematic because of the timing. So that's a real fascinating little twist. Yeah.
So
good detail.
I'm gonna have to go see it now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get my stopwatch out. Yeah.
Oh, so Panzer Dragoon was a big one, but I suppose were there any other big games 1995 that you guys picked up? So, Dibs, what did you pick up next? I guess obviously we had games like Bug, we had a few other bits and pieces, but I think most of the focus is probably on the big three. But did you pick up anything before then?
No, I didn't. I was just holding on to my money because of
it's just cash, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean my friend Chris, he actually, you know what? He got a Saturn that same year, a little bit later too, because he got Virtua Cop when it came out in December. And that was the next game that I really played. Like, I remember he couldn't get the proper Virtua gun, so he got like a third party one, and it was like a little bit more. I can't remember what it was. It was still blue, but it was really flimsy feeling, a little bit. It wasn't quite up to scratch, I think. But like he sort of didn't have a choice because they were all sold out of the combo box. But so he got that, and then like I was saying to you guys before, like last time we were on, was I managed to get Virtua Fighter 2 before its official release, I guess, because I got it like a couple of days before Christmas. I got it from like the Virgin Megastore in Brighton, and I can't really remember how I kind of knew it was in or whatever, but like, yeah, I just remember going there.
Psychic strikes
sniffed it out.
I guess, yeah.
But I was like, I was with the bicycle.
Yeah, it's out somewhere. Where is it? Yeah, but no, I just like, I had like I got it like on the weekend before Christmas. So I think Christmas was a Monday that year, and I had it before even the weekend. So we were playing it like, all over that Christmas period. And it's like, that's obviously one of my defining memories of that time. So and then the next one up was like, I think it was on the 24th of January. I think that's when Sega Rally came out, and I remember distinctly it was a Wednesday because I was at college at that point, and I had Wednesday mornings off, and I was like, yes, that's perfect timing. I could go get Sega Rally, play it all morning, and like, yeah, that's exactly what I did. And I remember I had like a 15-minute window, get into town, run in and get in the game, and then getting back to the bus before it went back to my town, and like I just about made it by the skin of my teeth. But yeah, what a game! So that, yeah, basically my next two games, yeah, there was Virtua Fighter 2 and then Sega Rally. And then my mate had Virtua Cop, so we got to play all the big three.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, that's
what a time.
crazy escalation. I mean, yeah, we talk about it, things feeling like longer when we're younger, but that's only it's a few months, and the pace, the movement, the change of where we were to where we got by that Christmas. It's just nuts. And obviously, remember, there's me not paying a penny, just nipping around everyone's houses playing all these games for free. Happy days.
Well, you were very welcome. So.
Yeah. Listen, I put up with a 32X on behalf of you boys. So
that's true.
You still owe
back.
Yeah,
paid his dues. Oh, and James, I'm not sure. I can't remember if you got anything else in between, but I remember you said you got Virtua Cop sitting on the bottom shelf of all places.
Yeah.
How dare they? Yeah.
I mean, so obviously my uncle brought Panzer Dragoon home from his week-long stint at work. He brought that home. That was pretty much around about when it came out. Probably fueled that purchase via the demo. I think playing that made him pick that one up. But yes, I did get Virtua Cop. It was like a Christmas gift. And, you know, it's like it's like your game. The thing is, like the Saturn that you kind of surprised me with, it was bought for me, but it was like kept there. So it was like his Saturn, but it was like kind of really, it was like he didn't play games, he just bought tech. But I got Virtua Cop on the bottom shelf of WH Smith's. And it was like, do you want it for your Christmas? I'm like, there's a bear shit in the woods. It was like, you know, but there was one game in between. The game that you've just done a video on, Dan.
Street Fighter the movie.
Yep. Why he bought that, I'll never know.
Street Fighter.
Yeah, you got to play Street Fighter. How did you find it?
How
did you find it with the Mark 1 pad though? Because that was a nightmare for Street Fighter for us.
That's a combo. Street Fighter the movie and that pad. Have fun.
But I was coming from a zip stick with one button on the Amiga, mate. Like it's like just like giving a glass of ice water to someone living in hell, to quote Steve Jobs. You know, but see, like, I prefer the Mark II or the Mark 1 Japanese pad, Mark II Western pad. It's the perfect controller. But like, I can't shit on the PAL launch pad because it's what I was used to whenever I got the Saturn. So it's a chunky boy, and it's got awful clicky shoulder buttons, and it's got really chunky arse cheeks at the back that you just need to, it's like the Duke before the Duke sort of like. And that D-pad with those stupid 4 wee dots, man, it's like, but again, I was coming from like one button joysticks on the Amiga, so that this felt like a revelation. So, like, I don't have one. I've got the Saturn, but I don't have the controller.
I'm going to sound like an old man saying this, but how about all young gamers now need to go do a dit test and play with some old kit before they get their PS5. You know what I mean?
I was thinking the other day,
appreciate it.
You shouldn't be allowed to play modern games until you're like 15. You should be made to play retro games and get some appreciation. Start off with a tape deck.
Oh man,
micro.
Oh, the torture! I'm actually getting a little bit of like trauma just seeing that your Commodore 64 behind you there, just remembering those days with my tape player, craning my neck over the window, watching the tape. Is it going to load? Does it load? And then it gets to the end and clicks off. It's like, no, failed load.
I actually had it on before we recorded while I was playing Zelda. Oh, blasphemy! But I had it on before because I got one of these.
Flash.
Oh, nice.
So it's a flash card, but I was loading it with a new SD card because I'm going to sell it because I just bought a Kung Fu Flash 2. Like it. So the major difference between a Kung Fu Flash and the Kung Fu Flash 2, obviously going on a tangent here, is that the Kung Fu Flash 2 can emulate the RAM expansion unit.
All
Why would you
right.
want the RAM
Sexy.
expansion unit? Because that's the only way you can play the Commodore 64 fan port of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Ah, right, yeah. Which looks great.
I played it emulated, and I played for the Commodore 64 video I did, but I didn't finish it. I was just like,
Yeah.
I'm going to find a way to actually play this on real hardware and actually
Yeah,
Love
play
it.
it
yeah.
properly.
Love
Oh,
that
that'd be
dedication.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't have a method of capturing direct from the C64. It would just have to be for
Mm.
pure gameplay purposes.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Is
tell you,
everything?
that Saturn pad though, we were coming off the Mega Drive 6 buttons, so I can't pretend we didn't feel the D-pad. I mean, the D-pad's ruthlessly painful. It's weird and clicky. It's just a bizarre. I mean, we didn't have a Street Fighter game then, so we weren't necessarily feeling it as bad.
Mm.
But we were thinking, what the hell have they done? I have to say this though for it. I mean, it did. I did appreciate big, chunky. It had a certain quality to it. I know the shoulder buttons were bloody awful, but it did look the part. I thought, that Mark One Saturn it's a beautiful machine. I think the pad kind of did it a bit of justice. It was quite interesting and quirky looking. It was just when you went to play it, then
I
you
think
sort of
I think it looked. You're going,
They
James.
didn't need to change. They didn't need to change it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
same. The console,
Yeah.
the same design as it is in Japan. Just
Is
change
that-
the colours. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You gotta wonder what they were thinking. They literally had one of the best pads ever made, and somebody thought, you know what, we need to change that.
I
How
think-
did that happen?
I think yeah, but I think it is probably too similar to the Mega Drive 6 button pad. They're like that. They just thought it needs to look next gen. It needs to look
I
different.
think
Yeah,
that's
See,
it.
I think the
visually.
optics of it are pretty
That's
good.
the-
It looked.
that's the thing, the
It
optics-
looked
Yeah,
at the
nice
time.
and
It looked
shiny,
next
yeah.
gen, big,
It-
chunky, next gen. This is new.
Yeah.
It's improved. And when you get your hands on it, yeah, it's not as good.
Yeah.
I think-
It looked nice. It looked nice. But you
What-
just
what
got to think it was expensive, and they did go quality. They did give you some good kit out the box. I think part of it, I'm guessing, obviously, I have no idea what their thinking really was, but they just wanted something that looked more the part. Because if you say anything, and I must have said this myself. God, I adore that Matsu pad as well. But if I said anything for it, it just at first glance, the Matsu just can look a little bit like a cheap plastic flimsy pad. I love it to death, but you got to look at it. If you look at it really objectively, there's not a lot to it. So
Yeah.
that big chunky one,
Beautiful
Yeah.
simplicity, isn't it? Yeah, it's the big jump.
Yeah, yeah.
It does annoy me, and I think, well, how they obviously paid someone some money to redesign that. They paid
Yeah.
for someone to look at it, design it, and then they paid for all this custom injection molding to make
Yeah.
something completely different to the Japanese one, rather than just replicate it. I
Yeah.
think Pandemonium said that it's a beautiful abomination or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'd go with
still-
that,
And it
yeah.
was perfectly functional. I mean, literally the only time that we started getting tripped up by it was when some of the Capcom games started coming out.
Then,
Like
then
we had,
it's just
we had
unplayable.
X-Men, Children of the Atom, and stuff like that, and you can like unlock Akuma and all that sort of stuff in it. And it was just like that's when we started, struggling a
Because
little
you try
bit.
and do any Capcom rolling thumb move on that D-pad, and it's lacerate. It's just lacerate.
Well,
I'm
there's
trying
show
to
us.
channel
there's a-
my
there's-
Adam Corlick here, but
That's
So-
the one, huh?
That's a launch day
is-
Saturn.
Look at that bad
is-
boy.
that is the Saturn from that day.
yeah,
And there's a story behind that. If you want me to share that, so
It's a beauty.
basically during lockdown, I got a text off my uncle saying, "Look what I found," and it was this, but it didn't look like that. And Dan, I'll send you the picture of what it looked like, and you can add
Yeah.
it to the edit. It was covered in a kind of white undercoat spray. So I don't know that he did like DIY shit, man. So he must have been up in the loft fucking spraying.
Yeah.
God knows what. So it was a really thick white undercoat that was on it. And a lot of TLC to get it back to that. But it's absolutely pristine.
Yeah, that's great.
So I mean, like, it's obviously I've put the SD card sitting there, but I've got the Fenrir and I went for the blue. A
Nice.
color matched the blue for the 3D print, so that's the same tone of blue that's on the globe from the Saturn's PAL packaging.
nice.
So just the blue and the black just kind of go in there. But
Yeah.
so a lot of TLC to kind of get it back to where it belongs. But
Good job.
this is the catalyst for pretty much us sitting here. Really
Yeah, yeah. Without that, it's a bit like a Back to the Future moment. Without that, the photo of us four just fades.
Yeah, it is though, isn't it? I mean,
So-
it was so much the center of like all our friendship groups and stuff like that, wasn't it? At the time, like everyone was like hanging around, and the Saturn was almost like the kind of center of it. And it's like
Yeah.
just even like it is pretty crazy just thinking about like like the Saturn was the center of us kind of starting a blog like 10 years ago or whatever. It's the center of like what we're doing sitting here right now and stuff. It's like it's just been like the console that's just always been there. It's like the console of our lives or something like that.
The funny thing about that is that like, well, my own that I got for playing in my house, in '96 is long gone. Like this one probably holds more special memories just because it is from that launch day. It is the one I was surprised with. Like this is the Saturn that I walked in and seen running Virtua Fighter on day one. Like
that's cool.
That's just
that is one of those first batch. It's a rare breed. I was saying to Stibs before, getting one of those launch day ones, it's a rare breed. Yeah.
So there we go. So that's there we go.
So we've talked about a bunch of the games in that first year, in that first wave. We've gone from the launch titles to big three. Obviously, the rest is kind of history. But I think the last thing I wanted to kind of discuss is kind of an open question, but what typified the UK Sega Saturn experience? And I'm thinking, Sega Saturn magazine. What made the UK Saturn experience distinct? What's different about it? Obviously the Japanese side, obviously it was a runaway success over there, at least initially, at least in those initial years, until Final Fantasy VII just kind of swallowed up its lead overnight. In the US, it had that slow rollout, and then it was kind of an afterthought. Not really, when you speak to guys, and this is why it's kind of interesting because you have the US view. You talk to like Sat and Dave and the guys over there, and Dave's like he was the only person he knew. You talked to Mel, and he had him and his friend Nathan, but then didn't sound like there's too many outside of that. I found that in the UK there probably was a few more Sega Saturn owners. I knew two or three, just through school and stuff, and then we had stuff like Sega Saturn magazine. So I don't know. Over to you guys. So I suppose, Dibs, from your perspective, do you think there was a bit more of a Sega Saturn community in the UK than there was in kind of say in the US? Even though we were still outnumbered massively?
Yeah. I mean, it was hard for me because of like the community that I knew was like in the Saturn magazines and the Sega magazines of the time. Like I never met another Saturn owner in real life outside of our group. And like what typified like the Saturn for me, like it was getting crap off of everyone at college. It was like seriously, it was like they were just like Saturn sucks, get the PlayStation, blah blah blah, all this sort of stuff. But it was like one of the things that I had when because Bedro actually borrowed a PlayStation quite early on, and we played like some of the Tekken and the Ridge
I'm
Racer.
learning everything about you now, Bedro. You had a
I know.
SNES first,
Exactly.
and then
What's he
you played
like?
a PlayStation first.
Who is this guy really?
Some kind of imposter here.
This is the PlayStation Lovers 4 podcast, isn't it? Sega guys, what? Jeez.
So it's like all that Ridge Racer talk. You don't protest too much.
Yeah, exactly.
See, this is a Scooby Doo moment. See if we just take Bedro's face off. It's like Ken Kutaragi's under there. Like,
and I would have got away with it too if it wasn't for you pesky Dibs.
Oh man.
But that's the thing. When we do our chats, that's the one consistent thing about me is I always seem to be borrowing stuff and scavenging off people.
You do, yeah.
I'm really worried that's my reputation I'm getting. But
the thing was, like so you had that PlayStation. We put like a bunch of the games for their paces, and like I felt like a genuine kind of cold shock. Like, and this is going to get some hate probably, but I was thinking like this is this is the PlayStation that all these magazines like are going on about, that everyone puts up on this pedestal. And like I was playing these games, and then I went home and I kind of threw on like Virtua Fighter 2, like Sega Rally, all this stuff, and I was like, man, I cannot believe how much of a bad rep the Saturn gets compared to this other console. It was
Oh,
like,
yeah, it
yeah,
wasn't
no, it
just you,
was,
Dibs. I mean, I remember I got my Sega Saturn for my birthday, and then
yeah,
December for Christmas, I had a friend that got a PlayStation 2, and he got like
uh-huh,
Tekken 2 and a few others.
right,
And it was like I'd been playing PlayStation Virtua Fighter 2 for a month, and I went and played Tekken 2 with its like blocky characters, dark
mm,
visuals, and it was so slow. And I was just like,
Mm.
this is so much worse than what I'm playing.
exactly,
And
but no
and
one knew it.
there's like I think it actually was Maximilian Dude when he was doing one of his retrospectives, and he's talking
Yeah,
about one, and he goes and I went to play Tekken, and I was like, this is so much worse than all the stuff I'm playing here on Sega Saturn. But the thing is,
right.
yeah, even I don't know, it felt like people were kind of blind to it.
Yeah, that's the
Mm.
thing, because no one had a Saturn. Like all the people who were giving me crap at college, they hadn't played the Saturn. They were just telling me it was rubbish, and I was like, these games are like fantastic that I'm playing at home, and like they're just going on about PlayStation and that because it
Yeah,
just so
yeah,
had the
yeah,
wind in its sails, and everyone was just like, the PlayStation is the best, the Saturn sucks, and it was like,
yeah.
oh man, how did we get
We,
to this point?
I was going to say like the British experience thing. That was a big part of it. We were so taken by surprise by what Sony pulled off
Mm,
because their marketing was great everywhere, but they had a very British marketing thing they did. Like the club scene stuff
Mm.
really resonated here. We had that
yeah.
amazing club scene. They really hooked into something. But the thing, I think the thing was, I remember at the time just how being so surprised at that how unfair it seemed. I know that sounds so whingy looking back, but you look over the last few, yes, we had console wars, but actually, generally, Britain was pretty steady as she goes. It was like America, Mega Drive, America versus Japan, the success of Sega swung wildly around. Over here, it just sort of generally seemed if games were good, they got played. SNES was popular, Mega Drive was popular, NES was popular to an extent around us. Master System was popular, Game Gear, Game it just all got a fair crack of the whip, and if it had the games, it got played, it did okay. Everyone would kind of have a rivalry, but it was quite an equal rivalry because they had good stuff to throw at each other.
Mm.
Genuinely, that first year and a half, it just felt crazy that I was staring at these games. We were playing these games that I just thought, this is so good. What is going on? What is going on that people aren't getting this machine and that they're so in love with the PlayStation? And obviously, I was seeing it. I kind of knew the answer, which is this like marketing machine and the slickness of the campaign. And, it was the birth of not just PlayStation and computer games being successful advertising, like lifestyle advertising, where you kind of ditch the detail and you ditch the tech. It really birthed in that area. It's fascinating if you go and read back the magazines, especially the American ones from the early 90s. Game adverts are like a picture and loads of text like describing the game and giving you detail. And then PlayStation just came along and said, screw that. Let's just make it cool. Don't detail. Forget detail. Let's just make it cool. And you got to, I mean, it was an absolute like perfect thing. We studied it in an A level how good that campaign was. Fair play to them, but I just couldn't get it at the time. It was the first time where things just didn't seem fair.
The thing was, Sega did that though. Sega kind of birthed that.
Yeah,
You look at
yeah,
say you
With
look
the
at
Mega
Sega
Drive.
Mega Drive when
Yeah.
Mega
that's
Drive
true.
got its
Yeah,
success.
Yeah.
That was Sega's tactic.
Yeah, it
yeah,
was. I,
the
I
gorilla
was just
stuff. That's
I was
true,
just
actually.
thinking
Yeah,
earlier today. Like I remember when the Mega Drive was first around, it had like the games like Road Rash and all these kind of like quite hardcore games, like in comparison to Nintendo. And they had the Cyber Razor Cut adverts and all that, and they were like dark and gritty and quite serious.
God, we love
And
those.
yeah, it was brilliant. But there was this weird kind of thing where at my school where if you had a Mega Drive, it meant you were hard. And I remember
It's
I
true.
said
It's
I
true.
said something about some kid one time, and someone like warned me, like in the same breath, like don't mess with him. He's hard. he's got a Mega Drive, and I didn't question it at all. It literally, it was they just sown the seed so much that it made sense to me. Like, oh
Yeah.
right, yeah, I better look out.
It's true. It's true. The Game Boy
Got
Internets
bionic arm and
was
everything underneath.
were-
You had the Cyber Razor
yeah,
cut. which,
they were softy kid consoles, and Mega Drive was not. Yeah, I get it. Oh, and it's good. I'll make one thing talking about stuff. Yeah, because Sega America did all that stuff too. You know, driving the vans around with the Mega Drives in the back and parking outside. You know, that's the equivalent of taking the PlayStations into the club. You know, I get it. I guess it just worked in a way. They just shut the Saturn out so effectively. It's the first time I just thought, this isn't about the games. It's not about the machine. They've just won through tactics. And it just that was part of the experience.
Retail bias was
retail
massive.
Mm.
It's like I thought I was losing my mind, like whenever I kind of brought that up, because like as I say, I've witnessed in both high street chains like Comet and Dixon's, and even like the kind of the smaller kind of indie stores like Game Zone, like and Partick. Like, I've witnessed staff actively dissuading people who were talking about like Saturn. You know, but have you seen the Sony PlayStation? Like the guy in Game Zone, like actually, I remember me, Sam were in, and they had Panzer Dragoon running and they had Ridge Racer running, and someone was looking at Panzer Dragoon, and it was a woman and a wee boy, and they asked, what game is this? It's Panzer Dragoon on Saturn. It's not that good, but have you seen the Sony PlayStation? I'm like, and I'm like, really? And then being in like Comet and watching like the Sony rep with his wee suit, his wee lapel badge, his wee Sony logo, and he's actually moving rearranging the shelves and moving Saturn games down and PlayStation games up and giving certain PlayStation games more visibility. He didn't like it whenever the minute he turned his back, I started taking Saturn games and moving them back up. It's like
nice one.
It's like just not looking. It was me and Sam getting up to all kinds of mischief, but it was like it wasn't until like later on in talking to Dan, and he said no, he'd experienced it. Someone actually tried to dissuade him from buying a Saturn.
Yeah, do you know what it was like? If you see that's first Sonic the Hedgehog commercial from the US, and you've got that guy going, "Hey, if you want to play this, it's Super Mario here." The guy's going, "No, I want Sonic." Going, "What? No, you want Super Mario?" That was kind of basically what it's like, but real life.
Why you told that to Steve Ballmer there?
I mean, that's what the guy sounds like.
How much would you pay?
But yeah, I kind of corroborated it for you, didn't I?
Aye, and then I put something out on X, and there was like 4 or 5 other people for the UK. Well, like, yeah, it happened to me as well. And I'm like, holy, like, there's tales up and down the country, and like, Sony definitely, in my opinion, leveraged stock and the brand with retailers, like whether they gave out, better commission, whether there was better sell through, whether they basically gave retailers discounts on, or maybe more favourable stock on other items like hi-fis and VCRs and TVs and stuff. We just don't know, but they had an iron grip. They definitely leveraged their
massive
over other retail. Because like I still remember, like, before PlayStation came out, like, and I told like friends at school, "Oh, my uncle surprised me. You got a Saturn at the weekend." Like, it was like, so people were aware of it, and like that's why they didn't believe me. Like, I still remember big Sam McKerricker. See, I can still name drop these boys. Sam McKerricker and Davey Heffernan. They never believed me the fact that I had this, right? And I still remember the next weekend, I smuggled the instruction manual out of my uncle's Saturn box, put it in my backpack, and brought it to school. Now, if you remember the Saturn manual, it was a big A4, the big colour front.
Nice.
The blue and black logo.
That's it.
And the artwork, sorry. And like, I smuggled that in, and I was like, "Look, guys, it's the instruction manual. He has got a Saturn." It was like that was like, and there was a spell where like people, they wanted to know about it, what were the games like. There was you did feel there was an excitement, but then whenever PlayStation hit, it was just like everything changed overnight. It was just like somebody flicked a switch. It's bizarre. But Saturn's kind of the question about what was it, the kind of the wording of the question, Dan? What signifies the Saturn's UK launch.
Yeah, what would the Saturn UK experience? What would symbolize the Sega Saturn? So I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, you got that. We were outnumbered by PlayStation. That was hands
Aye.
down the more popular system. But in my experience, there were people that did have Saturns. I did meet them in real life, and not for. And there were friends that I got to buy Saturns eventually. But yeah, and I was also thinking like Sega Saturn magazine was a core part of the experience. I think we all probably
Yeah.
picked it up at some point, didn't we?
Totally, yeah.
I
Yeah, it
think
was just so
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah, it was. I tell you, there was a bit in that period as well, though. I mean, in fairness to them, Sony made gamers. They created a brand new population that hadn't been there a year ago, and it was the first time a lot of these conversations were with people that just wouldn't have been into games a year ago. And a lot of the conversation was so frustrating because they were like, just PlayStation, this and that, all off hype, and it was a new experience to go through that. Previously on Mega Drive or SNES, you'd have been talking games to each other, you'd have been battling on proper grounds, and then it just felt like, yeah, it just felt a bit like this new wave was coming in, and you were having these old conversations with people that just didn't seem to be in it for the same things you were. Don't know.
Yeah, there was a lot of stories of like celebrities saying, "Oh yeah, I wasn't into gaming until I saw Wipeout on the PlayStation," and then next thing you know, it was a phenomenon. It captured the zeitgeist like nothing else before it. Really, you
Yeah.
had David James letting in goals. For was it for Liverpool at the time? I think saying that he couldn't play well because he'd been up all night playing Tomb Raider or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, they got
And
that joke in Friends as well, didn't they? And that was like, how many millions of people watch Friends about like, what is it? Like Chandler's saying like basically kind of alluded to the PlayStation being the best gift you could give to someone or something
Yeah.
like that. And it's
just
like,
name dropping. And the thing
yeah.
is, I get that that's PlayStation, not the Saturn experience. But the point was, it was kind of what we were getting. You go back to what we said at the start, the hype we had, the excitement we had, and Daytona was enough for us. But then by the end of the year, it was hype realized. We were getting this magic, amazing stuff that we really loved, but we were caught in this bizarre bow wave of this sort of counter like information like campaign going on over there, and we were like, what's going on? This is like, I'm not seeing out there what we're experiencing here. It was such a weird time. So
That's what sums it up for me. Is I think that through the whole Saturn life in the UK, I always felt like Sam and I were part of this like club of like gamers, wherever they are, that were playing these amazing games that nobody seemed to want, and it was baffling. It was like through school, like taking shits on Virtua Fighter and Ridge Racer's better than Sega Rally, and it was like it was just usual playground classroom bullshit talk. It's kids being kids, but it did feel like as you were going through those kind of years, you were like, man, like we're playing these games and like no one else is. You felt like you had like it was almost like a kind of secret, not a secret club, but you had this elusive kind of machine that nobody was buying, and there was these amazing games on it. And as I say, like games like Athlete Kings Worldwide Soccer '97 were just the benchmark for me and Sam playing many of those over and over again. So Athlete Kings is just like, oh man, what a game that is!
Yeah.
It's just so
That's
many
a good
memories
one,
locked in there. But Sega Saturn magazine is another key part of it. Like Richard Ledbetter, our commander in chief.
Yeah.
He kept us going. He was probably going back and playing a PlayStation as well, but he fought the good fight for us, and he kind of kept us going. He always fought Saturn's corner, even today. I think if like I'd love to see like some DF retro stuff. We said that to John whenever we had him on, like for the Saturn's 30th, they should have like a video of DF retro of Rich reconnecting with the Saturn launch games.
That would be cool.
I'd love that.
And like he went, he said he would take it back to him, but whether anything comes out, I don't know. But the problem with Rich is that Rich can't remember half the shit that he did. Rich was at the New Challenge conference and stood next to Yuji Naka and can't remember it. So He only remembered because John showed him a photograph in Sega Saturn
so
magazine
good.
of him beside Yuji Naka.
Wow.
Like, so that guy's probably forgot more than we'll ever remember when it comes to
Yeah.
back then. But
No, agreed.
you know,
I do think those mags, they really felt it as well, though. I always got the impression with them they felt part of the community that we're describing. You know, when we say, like, you know, you're right, it's pre-internet, the magazines are what you had, and I always felt they responded to that. I've been reading that Jazz Rignall book, you know, his kind of Games of a Lifetime, I think it's called, and he's just read a bit. Actually, he's talking about when they went to their first ever kind of meet and greet. They did some kind of event thing, and he was working for Zap magazine or something at the time. And he was like, the first time he'd ever met people that were reading a magazine, and they kind of came in and they wanted autographs. And he was like, what? We're like two kids just writing about games, and you think we're up there? And he describes it as saying, the thing was, there weren't personalities in gaming. You know, we were the face of gaming. And that's exactly how I felt about Sega Magazine and Mean Machines. They're the embodiment of the community. They were our figureheads. And you put it right. He's the Master Chief, isn't he, Rich Ledbetter? And he's like, but we really looked up to them, but I really felt they felt it as well. The way they wrote and the way they talked about it, especially when they sort of got a bit honest in the later part of Sega Saturn magazine and were just, you know, they write was on the wall, but they'd write in such a passionate like way. You felt they were part of the same thing we were part of, and that was a big part of it. And they're so funny, you know. It was a very British part of the experience as well. You know, I go back and read a lot of the American magazines. They have really good coverage, but they didn't really have quite the same fun that we were having. So that was part of the community too, I think.
Let's not forget that Rich Ledbetter, the editor of the official Sega Saturn magazine, by the end was actively telling people to chip their Saturns to play imports.
That's why I did it. Yeah, I was like,
and an
right,
official magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were at that point where there was, you know, Sega Europe weren't going to be making any more money off of us, so we might as well have got them chipped and import. Yeah.
If you were sitting in Sega and literally thinking, how can we keep people interested until the Dreamcast eventually comes out? I mean, that's basically the answer. It's like just let them chip it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Sega Saturn magazine was kind of the conduit between the community. That's where everyone wrote in. That's where they read. You knew that people all around the country were reading the same magazine.
Yeah.
And then that passion, you know, even I got no doubt that Rich was going and playing N64 and PS1 in the background, but he was still coming back and saying, yeah, Nintendo's blurry meso, whatever it called it at some point, Vaseline machine, I think he used at one point. You could tell the passion was there.
It really was, yeah.
Yeah, he had the passion, and it wasn't just, you know, a lot of magazines would have probably just gone, well, it's dead, that's it, we're done. But he, you know, he was pushing on with all the import news and then Dreamcast news. You know, the whole Sega vibe was felt through that magazine, and that's kind of what
that's the thing. Like, see all the guests we've had on this show, like Al Nelson, Tom Kalinske, Blake J. Harris, Peter Moore. My bucket list guest. I need to get Rich Ledbetter on this pod, man.
Yeah, we want to see it as well.
We do.
It's such a natural home for an interview. If he's going to do one, come to you guys. I really mean that. Yeah, I'll tell you two quick stories that really typify that. One is that I mean, Div's has got the memory. I can't pretend I've got the memory, but he remembers reading your letter about like Panzer Dragoon. And
well, there you go. It's tying the community together.
It is, yeah.
Before
communicating somehow before
all of this happened. The internet. And the other one was we just had a video recently with Daytona. We featured a little clip of when Dibs wrote into Mean Machine Sega, did that picture of the Daytona car. Yes. And,
that was brilliant.
I don't know if you've seen it actually, Dibs, but someone just commented on the vid and just said, "Oh, I remember that. I remember that.
Oh yeah,
I remember that." And I was just like,
yeah.
It's not even my picture, it's yours. But obviously it was big for us as a friendship group, you know, that you'd had it published. We were still really excited. Yeah. And I read that and I thought, oh, that's so cool. You know, even back then, we're sort of all these connections.
Makes me wish I put in more effort actually on that.
yeah. Come on, dude. But do you know what I mean? It's like, I really don't think we're kind of adding that community angle to it. It really felt like that at the time. The British experience was it included that with the magazines, and I just think those stories really, really kind of show it. It was a real thing. So
Yeah, yeah, and I think we're really fortunate in that respect because when you speak to Saturn Dave, he was having to import Sega Saturn magazine
yeah,
because they
yeah,
didn't actually have a dedicated Sega mag over there. So
Mm.
we were lucky in that respect. We got an official magazine that was, but we got a couple of dedicated Saturn mags. Obviously, we had Saturn Power as well,
Mm.
but Sega Saturn magazine really did feel like that was the true beating heart of kind of the Saturn community at the time. That's what everyone had, and
Yeah.
and you had the demo discs on there, the
Yeah.
Sega Flash ones, Nights into Dreams, the Christmas disc came on the front of there, so it was special. And I think the thing is that I've always noticed is, and yeah, and it comes back to what you were saying, James. It did feel like I was part of some sort of secret club. It's like everyone.
yeah,
I knew. I'm trying to think. I knew two people from school. One was in my year, one was in the year above that had Sega Saturns as well, and we'd swap games. As soon as it was like a Stonecutters, the Simpsons Stonecutters episode. We got the secret handshake. It's like, wait a minute, you've got one as well. All right. Well, what games have you got? Oh, you've got Last Bronx. Oh, I'll tell you what, I've got Virtua Cop 2 and the guns. So if we swap you, and then we were like, then we're swapping games. It's like some sort of secret click or something. And
yeah.
then and it was just like out of everyone that I met who had a Saturn, that was obviously admittedly wasn't many. And then when I convinced a few of my other friends after playing Guardian Heroes, Saturn Bomberman, Death Tank and stuff to buy Sega Saturns, obviously it was like 97, it was at Death's door then. But not one single person kind of regretted
Mm.
buying it, even to the point where I used to do full console swaps with friends. So I had a friend with an N64 and I'd swap my Saturn. He'd have the Saturn and I'd have the N64 for about a week or something and we'd swap back. And he would say, no, the Saturn is actually really good. It'd be like, I wouldn't give up the N64 forever for it, but the Saturn is brilliant. So
Mm.
people that actually gave it a chance didn't really have a bad thing to say about it, I found. People that
Yeah.
actually embraced it and like gave it a chance and wasn't swayed by effectively media bias at the time.
Yeah, massive
Loved
media
it.
Yeah.
bias.
And
Yeah.
because I have to play it a bit the other way as well, because in our house we had an N64, we had a PlayStation. I was never closed off to playing them. I think we're all the same. There's loads and loads of PlayStation games I love, and there's loads of great things I can say about it. I never try and like shit on it just because the Saturn lost or anything like that. It's not about that. It was that bewilderment of this is so good. Why are you not
Yeah.
playing the Saturn? It's like
Yeah, I love the N64. As much as I don't like Mario 64, I like a lot of the other games on it, especially Lilac Wars. Love a lot of games on the PlayStation. I've played them all, and it's not just because the Saturn was all I had. I could have had the other consoles. I just played them, and they
played
were
them and chose. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. The secret club thing, man. It's funny, isn't it? We all say it. Everyone we speak to, it's like we all felt it. Like just sort of separately in our own little communities at the time, we all kind of felt that way. And maybe it's a bit of a bond to it. Maybe it's kind of why the love has sort of stayed so strong for it because you did have to go through all that stuff. But it's funny, isn't it? Like we all felt the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
We all felt the same, still feel the same now, all felt the same media and retail bias. It's like,
Yeah.
and that's the thing, like, I think that's why the Saturn community is so strong, like, especially if the US one's strong, but the UK one, the wee contingent we've got, whether it's on YouTube or X, I think is because, like, we didn't have anywhere to gather together, like, other than the letters section of Sega Saturn magazine. That was like our forum. We didn't have anywhere to kind of like meet up or talk about it. You only had one mate who had a console. So like now I think like as the decades have passed, we're kind of making up for lost time. Like we're creating the community that we really never had back then.
It's so true. You really feel that, yeah. Like your channel has been absolutely stellar for that. There's so many of us obviously connected through Sega guys, and obviously I say offline, like on the other socials and stuff that are connected to it. It's been cracking, but it's the same in it. Yeah, we all read those mags, and obviously it's like we're almost reconnecting. It's weird, but but yeah, it's great. It's great to have that, and I guess the other thing now is as well. I know it's a long wait we've had, but I know you guys feel as well. But the the recognition retrospectively Saturn's now getting and
Yeah.
that Dreamcast getting, I wouldn't say it's. I wish it had wanted, done well in the first place, obviously, but it is kind of sweet. It's like sort of, it's sort of at last, at last, just sort of seeing it. So
Aye,
Yeah.
it's bittersweet. It's like
bittersweet, exactly.
It reminds me of the gif from The Office where Steve Carell goes, "Thank you." It's like it's like we've been telling you how good this thing
Yeah,
is for
exactly.
decades. It's like, and it's like, is the Sega Saturn the most underrated console ever made? It's like, no, it's not underrated. It's just underappreciated.
Yeah.
Is what it was. It's like,
Underdiscovered. Yeah.
aye, and that's the thing. Like I think back to the big three and when they came out, and we've said on here so many times, like the best games of the PlayStation didn't come out until after Saturn was gone. Like Gran Turismo, Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, stuff like that was all after Saturn was kind of dead and buried over here. So, like, again, how the hell did Sony manage to just create this kind of reality distortion field that you're looking at Virtua Fighter 2, Sega Rally, and Virtua Cop after seeing Panzer Dragoon, and you're like, those 4 games weren't enough to make you want this? Like, why? There's no performance issues on any of those games. They are all rock solid 3D experiences, early 3D experiences, but they're still rock solid. And they're just damn good games. Why were people not queuing up? And some folk go, well, gamers were looking for more narrative-based content. No, they weren't. Not yet. No one was looking for a Tomb Raider was out, but no one was looking for like a Metal Gear Solid or any of these kind of more narrative story-based games at that point. Arcade was still relevant. It was still impressive. It was still showing you the future. And the Saturn has basically brought 3 of the best cutting-edge arcade games into the home, and nobody wanted them.
Yeah,
Like,
they had
why?
Warhawk.
Yeah.
Warhawk's a really impressive 3D game. Who talks about that game now? It's very strange. And yeah, I don't buy the whole arcade games are going out of date, because Ridge Racer had one track, repeat one track, and then Ridge Racer Revolution came out not long after, which was kind of trying to keep that momentum going, and that similarly had a dearth of content. So
I'm just sitting here because I remember someone replied on my Daytona "You've Been Lied To" video, and they replied with, "You're forgetting about Ridge Racer High Spec demo." And I'm like, yeah, what, the 1998 freebie that comes with Ridge Racer Type 4 that had like 2 cars on the track in order to get the resolution up? Go away, man. It's 3 years after the matter of fact. Like, just that shit does not wash at all, man.
Yeah.
It's I think it just, you see a lot of at the time. You see people just saying, "Oh, games make the console. You need games to make the console." The Sega Saturn had games. It was just all about perception. Sega Saturn didn't have a great perception. For whatever reason, a lot of it was Sega's own doing.
They're not an innocent party here. Let's don't forget that. We're not sitting here saying that Sega are some kind of poor victims. They made choices that were questionable. But
I think the great thing that's been great to really, we talked about the games and we talked about the launch, but I think the last part here, when we've been talking about the sense of community, the sense of wonder, really, the Sega Saturn was this amazing exotic thing. James, it was your pathway to Virtua Fighter, and for us, I think it was, for me, I thought it was too high tech. Probably, I think it sounded like you were of the same opinion, Visual. It was almost unobtainable. So we were looking at the 32X route. You actually went it. I couldn't even afford that at that time. And Dibs, you saw an opportunity to get
I was very fortunate. Thank you to my sister for just destroying my Mega CD.
Yeah, Best thing Nintendo ever did was do an inverted DC plug for the power. The annoying thing is that I've got a Super Famicom down there, and that uses the Mega Drive plug.
Yeah.
So
I know
it's
it works on
only
it, doesn't
it's
it?
only the power one.
Yeah,
So stupid Nintendo.
I know.
But it works out well for you.
Yeah,
It did.
Got
It
the
did. Yeah.
insurance
Super
now.
Nintendo, brilliant Nintendo. Thanks, Nintendo. Best thing ever.
Is it a SNES boys coming out? Look out.
But yeah, and I think it really is that sense of wonder that those games gave us, those memories, and the sense of community that we got, And obviously, yeah, it's interesting, And I couldn't remember seeing that picture that you drew in Mean Machines at the time, Dib. It was great to see it back then. And obviously, the connections were there all over.
Yeah.
So it really is, in terms of a UK launch, in terms of a UK community, it really was, it always something that I think of fondly more than kind of negatively.
Yeah,
Commercials
totally.
commercials are one thing, but I think, the one thing I'd put to you guys, we knew that we knew that it wasn't doing well commercially, but I always felt like it didn't matter. I was just
Yeah.
enjoying the games.
Exactly. That's exactly how I felt. Like the games that we were playing were just on some other level. And it's like what people were saying to me at college and all that stuff, and all the different magazines who were going in on the Saturday. It's just like it just bounced off me a bit because I was loving the game so much. Just that stuff like Knights and things like that. It's like, oh man, what a machine and what a batch of games. I love it. And it's like, and it has transcended the years, hasn't it? 30 years later, I'm still playing it. It's like, and I ain't stopping anytime soon. It's just amazing. So, yeah, Saturn wins in my books.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it.
Well then, gents, I think that rounds it off quite nicely. So yeah, brilliant to talk through the Sega Saturn UK launch with you guys. Even if I didn't enjoy it myself, I had to wait. I had to wait a little bit. I'm living vicariously through you guys, James and Dibs, playing your own Saturns. And Begel, you leaping on Dib's bandwagon at the time. Much as he paid to pay you back for that 32X experience. But no, it's been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for another fantastic chat. So
Cheers, boys.
yeah. So
Oh,
we'll
thank
open it up
you.
to our viewers and listeners. Thank you so much to listening along with this one. Hope you've enjoyed this trip down memory lane with the Sega Saturn's 30th UK launch anniversary. Love to hear your thoughts. If you're from the UK, your thoughts and memories of the time. If you're from outside the UK, if you're one of our friends in the US, we'd love to think what are your thoughts on the UK experience? How did that differ from your own? So yeah, get in touch via the comments below, or via the Sega Guys Discord, or via the Radio Sega Discord. If you've enjoyed the video on YouTube, give us a like and a subscribe, because that really helps the channel. And if you want to be extra mega, you can become a Sega Guys member on YouTube with a bunch of awesome perks from as little as 99p, where our Akira All Access members get their names read out, just as James is about to do right now.
We have our Akira All Access members for today's show. We have G-Man, Steph Peaks, Mike Kowski, Craig Williamson, Sega Saturn, Shiro, Resident SD, P-Wall, Peter 007, Andy Mackey, Nick Tulloch, Greg Matthews, Tom Thumb, Kaiju Leviathan, Nelson Serino, and David Owens. Thank you very much to all of our members and subscribers for your continued support.
Thank you very much. And yes, and if a membership isn't for you, and if you've just been along for the ride on this one, we are so appreciative of you being with us for the duration. Every viewer, every subscriber that we get, we couldn't be more grateful and humbled. So hopefully we'll see you next time. Until then, we'll see you on the Sega side.
You must play Sega Saturn.
Sega!